My stepdad installed a camera, not discreetly, but prominently pointed directly at my bedroom window, supposedly to shield me from our neighbor. The irony was a bitter taste in my mouth, a heavy knot of fear tightening in my chest. So, when the world felt like it was closing in, I did the only thing that made sense to my 9-year-old self. I ran, not from the supposed threat, but to that very neighbor for help. I was barely 9 years old, a time when the world should feel safe and full of wonder, when Thomas moved in next door. He had just endured the agonizing loss of custody of his 2 young daughters, a detail I would only fully grasp later. But as soon as my stepdad, Jeff, caught sight of him, a strange, almost predatory glint entered his eyes. He rushed over to me, pulling me closer with an unsettling urgency. "That man there is a creep," he hissed, his fingers brushing, almost caressing, my lower back in a way that sent a shiver of discomfort down my spine. "I'll have to start doing things to protect you, sweetheart." The endearment, meant to be comforting, felt like a slimy falsehood, a prelude to something far more sinister. He then flashed a peculiar, almost knowing smile, a chilling expression that seemed to suggest he relished the arrival of a supposed predator next door, as if it presented an opportunity for him. That very night, without delay, Jeff went through the motions of installing a security camera, ostensibly to keep an eye on Thomas. Yet, with a perverse twist that made my stomach clench, the lens of that camera was aimed not at Thomas's property, but squarely at my bedroom window, a constant and blinking eye invading my most private space. Following this, he initiated a series of nightly safety checks, a euphemism for the terror that unfolded after my mom had finally drifted off to sleep. He would silently slip into my room, a shadowy figure in the moonlight, and sit heavily on the edge of my bed. There, in the suffocating darkness, he would launch into disturbingly vivid, gratuitously detailed explanations of what men like Thomas supposedly desired and intended to do. Each word was a tiny barb, launching itself deeper into my burgeoning fear and confusion, painting a grotesque picture of malevolence that I couldn't reconcile with the quiet man next door. The first time I dared to voice the gnawing, unsettling feeling just stirred within me, Mom was in the living room, the comforting scent of fabric softener filling the air as she meticulously folded laundry. "Mom," I began, my voice a small, wavering tremor. "Jeff keeps coming into my room at night and oh, honey," she interjected, her words slicing through my fragile confession before I could even finish, her gaze never lifting from the neatly stacked towels. "Jeff loves you like his own daughter. You know that." But I pressed on, my voice gaining a desperate urgency. "But Mom, the camera he put up is pointing at my window." She finally looked up, her expression a mask of annoyance, not the concern I so desperately craved. "Stop being dramatic," she snapped, her words sharp and dismissive. "Jeff knows what he's doing. He manages security for his business, after all. Plus, he's just protecting you from that creep next door who looks at you all the time." With that, she gave me a swift, awkward half-hug, a hollow gesture devoid of warmth, before brusquely telling me to go do my homework. But even as her words echoed in the air, something felt deeply, fundamentally wrong. My child's intuition screamed at the glaring contradiction. After that incident, Jeff's behavior became demonstrably worse, the boundaries blurring into non-existence. The tickle fights he initiated stretched on for what felt like an eternity, far too long, leaving me feeling vulnerable and violated. And with Mom often working late shifts, he began to insist on giving me baths himself, asserting it was simply safer. Every moment felt like an invasion, every touch a transgression. The simmering dread finally exploded the day Jeff cornered me in the garage. Mom was at work, leaving me utterly alone and exposed. He'd been drinking beer all afternoon, the cloying scent of stale alcohol clinging to him like a second skin, his words slurring slightly. "You're becoming such a pretty girl," he murmured, his voice thick and unsettlingly close. Before I could even react, his hands, heavy and cold, clamped onto my shoulders, pushing me roughly against the unyielding concrete wall. "Let me show you something special." My heart hammered against my ribs, a trapped bird desperate for escape. I was frozen, unable to move, unable to scream. All those well-meaning warnings about stranger danger, all the insidious whispers about Thomas being a dangerous creep, spun in a dizzying, terrifying vortex in my head. But it wasn't a stranger who was threatening me. It was Jeff, his beer-soaked breath hot on my face, his hands squeezing my shoulders with bone-crushing intensity. "Sorry to bother you," the calm, steady voice sliced through the suffocating tension like a knife. Thomas stood framed in the garage doorway, an unexpected apparition, a beacon of hope. "My cat got out. Orange tabby, mind if I check in here?" The transformation on Jeff's face was instantaneous, a chilling theatrical shift. The predatory gleam vanished, replaced by a strained, overly friendly neighborly smile. His hands dropped from my shoulders as if burned. "No cat here, Thomas," he said, his voice laced with an unspoken warning. "You should leave." But Thomas, ever the silent sentinel, simply stepped inside anyway, his gaze unwavering. "I definitely saw him run this way," he stated, his eyes scanning the cluttered garage with an almost casual determination. "Let me just check behind those boxes real quick." I said, "Leave." Jeff's voice snapped, sharp as a whip, a raw edge of panic creeping in. "Just need to find my cat," Thomas reiterated calmly, his feet planted firmly, refusing to budge. In that tense standoff, a fragile window of opportunity opened. I slipped past Jeff, a ghost in my own home, and fled inside, leaving the two men locked in a silent, charged stare-down. That night, as if on cue, Mom and Jeff orchestrated a meticulously planned intervention. They sat me down for a talk, a carefully constructed falsehood designed to control the narrative. They painted Thomas as a malevolent force, someone trying to destroy our family, indoctrinating me with the chilling command that I should never go near him again. The ultimate betrayal came with the insidious declaration that I should always trust my stepdad because he wants what's best for me. But despite their fervent performance, I didn't believe a single word. My mind was consumed by the undeniable truth. Thomas had saved me. So the very next day, a desperate urgency propelling my actions, I sought out Thomas. When I found him walking his dog, the words, a torrent of suppressed fear and pain, just spilled out of me. Jeff does things, I stammered, my voice barely audible. He touches me, I know, Thomas said quietly, his voice a steadying anchor in my tumultuous world. His calm, almost resigned response was a revelation, confirming that I wasn't alone, that my terrifying secret was seen and understood. I've been documenting everything. He then, without hesitation, took me to the police station to report the abuse. My child's heart swelled with a fragile hope for justice, for salvation. But the moment we walked through those doors, the hope shattered. Things, with a sickening swiftness, did not go our way at all. Instead of the officers listening with compassion to a traumatized child attempting to articulate the unthinkable that her stepfather was touching her inappropriately, they laughed. Yes, they laughed. Their eyes, devoid of empathy, fixed on Thomas as they sneered. Stop manipulating this young girl. They paraded Jeff's public image like an impenetrable shield. Jeff Morrison coaches soul. He runs a charity thrift store. He'd never do that. Then, with a chilling pivot, they turned their full scorn on Thomas. You, on the other hand, it seems fitting, given your past. Why you're here with this little girl. The implication hung heavy in the air, a poisonous accusation. I tried desperately to speak up, to defend Thomas, to unravel the web of lies and explain my painful truth. But a woman officer, her face a mask of official indifference, actually led me away, separating me from Thomas and conducting her own biased interview. She didn't ask a single question about my stepdad, about Jeff's behavior, about my discomfort or fear. Now her questions revolved exclusively around Thomas, relentlessly probing, twisting, and misinterpreting. No amount of my frantic explaining could penetrate her predetermined narrative. They ultimately dismissed us both from the station, but not before delivering a chilling threat to Thomas. If he dared to make another report, they would arrest him. The system, designed to protect, had become an accomplice. The police must have called Jeff immediately after we left, for when I arrived home, both he and Mom were waiting in the living room, their presence an ominous shadow. Mom's face was a furious crimson, her eyes blazing with a misplaced rage. She grabbed my shoulders, her grip painfully tight, and shook me violently. Do you know what people will say? She shrieked, her voice laced with panic. Jeff's reputation could be ruined because of you. Behind her, a silent, more insidious terror, Jeff stood there, staring at me with a cold, unwavering intensity. His hand resting casually on his trousers, a silent, chilling promise of retribution. That night, he came into my room. I won't describe the unspeakable horror of what transpired, but when he finally left, the world felt like it had been ripped apart. I lay there, a broken vessel, barely able to move, for what felt like an hour, perhaps even two. My mind, a shattered kaleidoscope of terror, was too traumatized to speak, to cry, to do anything but exist in a silent, suffocating void. Then, when the house finally settled into the quiet rhythm of their deep, oblivious sleep, a flicker of desperate resolve ignited within me. I did something I had never dared before. I opened my window, agonizingly slowly, as quietly as possible, and climbed out into the cool, dark night. I had to get help. There was no other choice. I stumbled, limped, across the dark, dew-kissed yard, every muscle screaming in protest, toward the only place I knew offered any semblance of safety, Thomas's house. With a soft, almost imperceptible tap, I knocked on his back door. When he opened it, a horrifying tableau unfolded before my eyes, an unbearable echo of my own silent suffering. There they were, his two young daughters, huddled together on the living room couch, their small bodies covered in bruises. My heart seized, a visceral, sickening lurch. The marks on their arms and legs were chillingly fresh angry purple and sickly yellow splotches that made my stomach churn with revulsion and a crushing wave of recognition. A profound, overwhelming fear, cold and absolute, crashed through me, confirming the unspoken dread that had haunted me for so long. The monster was not just in my house, he was a shared nightmare, a silent epidemic. Like ice water flowing through my veins, chilling me to the core. A new surge of terror pulsed through me. Was Thomas hurting them, too? Had I truly escaped one monstrous tormentor only to stumble headfirst into the lair of another? My heart hammered against my ribs, a frantic drumbeat of dread. Then, the older girl, perhaps 7, with wide, luminous eyes, caught sight of me first. Her gaze, initially filled with a child's innocent curiosity, instantly widened into an expression of profound alarm. She sprang from the faded floral couch, a blur of motion as she rushed towards me. Instinctively, a primal fear seizing me, I stumbled backward, muscles tensed, poised to bolt. But her next words, surprisingly clear and devoid of malice, halted my retreat. "Dad, is she okay?" she cried, her voice laced with genuine concern. "She's bleeding." The younger one, a tiny whirlwind of perhaps 5 years, scrambled after her sister, her little hands clutching the older girl's shirt. Her eyes, mirroring her sister's worrying, fixed on me. "She looks hurt bad, Daddy." "Like we did," she murmured, a chilling echo of past trauma in her innocent voice. "When mommy girls go to your room, Thomas, his expression a careful blend of urgency and profound gentleness. Quickly intervened, the girls hesitated, their worried faces swiveling back and forth between me and their father, clearly grappling with what they were seeing. But Dad, the older one, insisted, her voice gaining a surprising conviction. She needs help, just like we did. A memory seemed to flicker in her eyes. Remember when you found us at Mom's? Thomas, with a calm authority that seemed to belie the chaos, responded, girls, please take your sister upstairs. Alexander. I'll help her. Reluctantly, their small shoulders drooping slightly, the girls turned towards the stairs. But not before the younger one, her grip surprisingly strong, reached out and clasped my hand. Her voice, a soft whisper, was a balm. It's okay. Our dad saves people. He saved us from Mommy. Their words, a confusing tapestry of hope and horror, spun like a dizzying kaleidoscope in my head. Thomas, moving with a practiced tenderness, carefully guided me towards the couch. My legs felt like jelly, trembling so violently I could barely support my own weight. He swiftly retrieved a soft, thick blanket and wrapped it gently around my shuddering shoulders, the small act of warmth amidst the internal chill of my fear. Then, maintaining a respectful distance, he settled into a chair directly across from me. I need to call an ambulance, he stated, his hand already reaching for his phone. No, the word, raw and desperate, tore from my throat, a primal scream against the perceived betrayal. They'll send me back. Mom won't believe me. The police already think you're lying. The words tumbled out, a torrent of my deepest fears and frustrations. Thomas slowly lowered his phone, his hands, I noticed, trembling ever so slightly, a subtle tremor that spoke volumes of his own suppressed emotion. Your injuries need, I interrupted him, a burning question overriding everything else. Your daughters, I managed to articulate, needing to understand, needing to connect their pain to his. Those bruises, did you? His voice, when he finally spoke, turned instantly hard, sharp as flint, but not directed at me. Their mother did that, he revealed, the words heavy with a pained resignation. She's had them for the past 3 months. They called me crying 2 days ago, said she'd been drinking again, getting violent. I drove for grueling hours straight and found them locked, terrified and alone, in a closet. He rose from his chair, his movements deliberate, and walked towards a sturdy filing cabinet nestled against the wall. With a practiced motion, he pulled out a thick, bulging folder, its contents a silent testament to years of struggle. I've been documenting her abuse for 2 years now, he explained, his gaze distant, haunted. Photos, meticulous medical records, even recordings of her outbursts. Yet, the court, swayed by her manipulative charm, still granted her primary custody because she convinced them I was unstable. Unfit, he then proceeded to lay out photo after agonizing photo before me, his daughters with discolored black eyes, ribs visibly bruised, raw cuts marring their slender arms. Interspersed were official medical reports detailing their injuries, and chilling text messages from his ex-wife, latent threats to harm the children if he didn't send her more money. But you lost custody, I murmured, utterly bewildered by the paradox. How? He offered a bitter, knowing smile. She's good at manipulation, he conceded, the similarity chilling. Just like Jeff, he carefully returned the folder to its place and sank back into his chair. She told the judge I was violent, he continued, the injustice palpable in his tone. She even paid a friend to lie, to concoct a story about witnessing me hit the girls. And the court, tragically, believed her because, he paused, running a weary hand through his hair, searching for the right words, or perhaps just bracing himself, because I have a past. Nothing, I assure you, involving children, but enough of a record that when she painted me as dangerous, as a threat, it stuck, like mud to a wall. A suffocating quiet descended upon the room, a silence so profound it felt heavy, pressing down on my chest. I instinctively pulled the blanket tighter around me, seeking a physical shield against the emotional onslaught. I need to document what Jeff did to you, Thomas said, his voice cutting through the stillness with a measured, careful tone. Photos of any injuries. Write down every single detail you remember, no matter how small or insignificant it may seem. We'll build a case, a fortress of undeniable evidence that they simply cannot ignore. A wave of cynicism washed over me. They already ignored us once, I whispered, the memory of past disbelief a bitter taste in my mouth. That was one attempt, he countered, his resolve unyielding. One battle perhaps, but not the war. We don't stop. He then reached for a fresh notebook and a pen, offering them to me. Start from the beginning, he urged, his voice gentle but firm. When did Jeff first? The sharp, jarring slam of a car door outside ripped through the fragile calm. We both froze, our bodies instantly tense, hearts leaping into our throats. Through the sheer, curtained window, I saw it, Jeff's familiar truck, parked in my driveway, ominously earlier than usual. And then, like a ghastly apparition, Mom's car pulled up directly behind him. He knows I'm gone, I whispered, the words barely audible. A frantic realization. Thomas moved with a swift, controlled urgency, his calm demeanor never wavering. Girls, he called, his voice projecting up the stairs. Quiet time. Stay in your room, please. He then led me quickly, yet gently, into his kitchen, a more secluded space, safely away from any prying eyes at the windows. They can't legally force you back tonight, he explained, his voice low and steady. Not when you're injured and actively reporting abuse. But make no mistake, they will try. Less than a minute later, the first violent pounding on his front door began. A relentless, booming assault that vibrated through the very foundations of the house. Thomas, open up. I know she's in there. Jeff's voice, amplified by rage, boomed, echoing ominously through the quiet residence. Thomas turned to me, his gaze steady, offering me an unexpected choice in the midst of the escalating crisis. Do you want me to answer? He asked. I could only manage a frantic nod, my throat constricted by a terror so profound I was utterly speechless. He walked towards the door, stopping just short of opening it, a barrier of wood and metal now between us and their escalating aggression. She's safe, Jeff. Go home, Thomas stated, his voice a calm, even tone, a stark contrast to the fury on the other side. Safe, Jeff scoffed, his voice dripping with venom. You kidnapped her, open this door, or I'm calling the police. Please do, Thomas replied, his composure unnerving. I'll be happy to show them her injuries. A stunned silence followed, thick and charged with unspoken threats. Then, Mom's voice, thin and reedy, laced with a faint desperation, cut through the tension. Please, Thomas, she's confused. She makes up stories. Just let me take my daughter home. Thomas's response was sharp, direct, cutting through her charade. She's not making anything up, and you know it. Another suffocating silence. Then Jeff's voice, lower now, more menacing, a viper's hiss. You have no idea who you're messing with, Thomas. I know people, important people. You think losing your kids was bad? I'll destroy what's left of your pathetic life. Thomas's voice, surprisingly calm amidst the escalating threats, suddenly boomed. Everything you're saying is being recorded. Jeff, please, continue threatening me. The chilling words hung in the air, transforming Jeff's aggression into potential evidence. Enraged, Jeff delivered a furious kick to the door, hard enough to rattle its very frame. You're done. You hear me? Done. We listened as their voices, now a cacophony of angry accusations and defensive retorts, faded slightly as they walked away. Mom's voice, still high and plaintive, drifted back to us. Maybe we should just call the police, Jeff. Let them sort this out. Shut up. Jeff snapped, his voice a whip crack of irritation and control. You want everyone knowing your daughter's a liar, that she's troubled. I'll handle this. Their car doors slammed shut with definitive finality. The engines roared to life, but instead of departing, they merely sat there, idling ominously in the driveway, their watchful eyes fixed on Thomas's house, a chilling declaration of intent. They're not going anywhere, I murmured, peeking cautiously through the blinds, the metallic tang of fear still fresh in my mouth. Good, Thomas responded, his voice almost nonchalant. Let them watch. He handed me the notebook again, its blank pages a stark invitation. Write everything down, date it, be specific, like you're building a meticulous timeline of a crime. I began to write, my hand still trembling so violently that the words on the page looked more like frantic scribbles than coherent sentences. Thomas, ever the pragmatic caregiver, quietly made a cup of tea and placed it gently beside me, its warmth a small comfort. Then he went to check on his daughters. From downstairs, I could hear the soft, soothing cadence of his voice, reading them a story, a tranquil oasis of normalcy in a night that was anything but. It was as if none of this harrowing drama was unfolding beyond their bedroom door. An hour crawled by. Jeff's truck remained a dark, unmoving silhouette in the driveway, its engine still idling, a constant, loathsome against the backdrop of the night. I had filled 3 pages with my shaky script when Thomas finally returned downstairs, his face etched with a quiet weariness. They're asleep, he said, his voice soft. How are you doing? Scared, I admitted, the word a raw confession. Tired, everything hurts, he simply nodded, a silent acknowledgement of my pain. In the morning, he declared, his voice imbued with a renewed determination, we'll go to the hospital. Get your injuries documented properly, officially. Then, we find a lawyer. Jeff said he knows people. Well, so do I. Different kinds of people. People who actually help children, who stand for justice, instead of hurting them. The notebook, now a weighty repository of my trauma, felt heavy in my lap. What if no one believes us again? I asked, the old fear resurfacing, a cold knot in my stomach. Then we keep trying, he responded, his gaze unwavering, a beacon of resolute hope. We find someone who will. He sat across from me once more, his presence a steady anchor. I've been watching Jeff for months now, he revealed, his voice dropping to a low, conspiratorial tone. The way he looks at you, his gaze lingering, almost possessive. I started meticulously keeping notes, scribbling down details, and covertly snapping pictures whenever the opportunity arose. Like that searing afternoon he insisted I wear that skimpy bikini, forcing me into a public display of vulnerability. I possessed chilling photographs of him, a predatory glint in his eyes, watching you. His expression, a mask of feigned innocence, barely concealed the sinister undercurrent. Consider the deliberate architecture of his cruelty, the way he strategically positioned that swimming pool, not for enjoyment, but so he could maintain an uncalled surveillance from multiple windows within his fortress-like home. Thomas, with a deep sigh that seemed to carry the weight of untold sorrow, then pulled out yet another, thicker folder, its edges worn from constant review. I've documented every single disturbing incident I've witnessed, he stated, his voice tight with suppressed anger. He spoke of the unsettling late-night visits to your room, precisely when your mother's car was conspicuously absent from the driveway, leaving you utterly defenseless. He recounted the numerous occasions he'd taken you out alone, far from watchful eyes, and then the telltale changes in your demeanor upon your return, the withdrawn gaze. The slight tremor in your hands, the way your shoulders seemed to slump with an invisible burden. Contained within that folder were page after page of painstaking, detailed notes, precise times, unshakable dates, clinical observations, and even clandestine photos taken from his own window. Starkly capturing Jeff leading me toward his truck, my body language screaming, not just discomfort, but absolute terror. Every fiber of my being recoiled, a silent plea for help etched onto my very posture. Can you truly grasp the depth of this insidious pattern? A tremor in my voice, I finally managed to ask, but why did you do all this? Why did you shoulder this immense burden for me? Thomas's gaze held mine, unwavering, and his answer was delivered with a quiet, profound conviction. Because, he began, his words slow and deliberate, I recognized the unmistakable signs. The subtle, insidious grooming, the calculated isolation, severing you from any potential protectors. The meticulous, predatory way he was setting you up for unimaginable harm, his voice, which had been firm, softened almost imperceptibly, dropping to a near whisper as if sharing a painful secret. My ex-wife, he confessed, did the exact same thing to our own girls. She masterfully manipulated everyone around us, spinning a web of deceit, convincing them that I was the dangerous one, the monster, all while she was the one, in plain sight. Systematically hurting them, a raw, visceral pain flickered in his eyes. I couldn't, he finished, his voice thick with emotion. I simply could not stand by and let this happen to another innocent child, especially not after what my own daughters endured. Suddenly, a sharp, insistent knock at the back door made us both recoil, a shared jolt of adrenaline coursing through our veins. For a terrifying split second, we both braced ourselves, convinced it was Jeff, his looming presence a shadow we couldn't escape. But then, a small, tremulous voice, distinctly feminine, called out, "Mr. and Thomas, it's Mrs. Grant from down the street." I saw the commotion, the lights on so late. Is everything all right in there? Thomas's head snapped towards me, his eyes, dark and expressive, silently asking for permission, a quiet deferral to my comfort. I offered a hesitant nod, a silent affirmation that we could trust her. Mrs. Grant, a woman who surely had to be at least 70, her silver hair neatly coiffed, stepped cautiously inside. Her gaze, sharp and perceptive despite her age, immediately fixated on me. Her kindly eyes swept over the rumpled blanket I clutched, the undeniable streaks of tears crisscrossing my face, and then the incriminating notebook splayed open on the table. "Oh, dear," she breathed, the words barely a whisper, laden with profound concern. What on earth has happened here? Has Jeff hurt you, child? The question, so direct and laced with genuine empathy, shattered my fragile composure. Before I could even register the words forming on my lips, they tumbled out, raw and unfiltered. Jeff hurt me. He's been hurting me, relentlessly, and no one, absolutely no one believes me. Except for Thomas, only he sees the truth. With a heavy sigh that conveyed decades of wisdom and sorrow, Mrs. Grant sank into a sturdy kitchen chair, the wood groaning slightly in protest. Her eyes, still fixed on me with a profound understanding, narrowed slightly. "I've often wondered," she confided, her voice raspy with age, "about the way that man Jeff watches you, a gaze that always struck me as unnervingly possessive. And I've certainly noticed how visibly nervous and uncomfortable you become whenever he's near." She then shifted her gaze to Thomas, a knowing glint in her eyes. "Is that why," she continued, gesturing suddenly towards the window, "Jeff is currently parked in his driveway, idling menacingly, like a territorial guard dog, just waiting to pounce?" Thomas nodded. His jaw tight. "Exactly," he confirmed, his voice laced with indignation. "He's trying to intimidate us, to send a clear, chilling message." He then went on to explain, "We went to the police earlier today, hoping for immediate intervention, but they didn't believe her. They dismissed her story as a child's fabrication." Mrs. Grant's mouth pressed into a thin, grim line, a silent testament to her deep disappointment and lack of surprise. "Of course not," she murmured, a bitter edge to her tone. "Why would they? Jeff coaches their children's soccer teams, donates generously to all their school fundraisers. He's a pillar of the community, isn't he? A good man in their eyes." Then, with a gesture of profound tenderness, she reached across the table and gently patted my trembling hand. "Sweetheart," she asked, her voice soft yet firm, "what do you need right now? What can we possibly do to help you?" That deceptively simple question, imbued with such genuine care and willingness to act, unexpectedly shattered whatever fragile dam I had constructed within myself. A fresh wave of tears, hot and stinging, erupted, unleashing ugly, guttural sobs that racked my entire body, shaking me from head to toe. Mrs. Grant, a beacon of calm in my storm, simply sat there, steadfastly holding my hand, offering silent, unwavering support, while Thomas, ever practical, hurried off to retrieve an entire box of tissues. Through my ragged sobs, Thomas's voice cut through, clear and resolute. "We need people to know the absolute truth," he declared, his gaze hardening with determination. "Jeff, in his predictable cunning, is undoubtedly going to spin this narrative. He'll manipulate public perception, twisting facts to make me the villain, accusing me of kidnapping her, of filling her innocent head with malicious lies. He'll turn this into a smear campaign." Mrs. Grant, ever pragmatic and quick-thinking, nodded decisively. Then, she stated, her voice firm, "We had better start spreading our truth first, before his poison takes root." Without a moment's hesitation, she pulled out her phone. Its screen glowing with insidious light. "I'm calling my daughter," she announced, her fingers already dialing. "She's a seasoned social worker, operating in the next county over." Crucially, they won't have the same entrenched allegiances or the same deeply corrupted connections that Jeff has cultivated here. They'll be objective. As Mrs. Grant began making a series of urgent, hushed calls, her voice a determined murmur, Thomas returned to my side, gently guiding me to finish meticulously documenting every single detail. Every incident, no matter how small or seemingly insignificant, every unwanted touch, every veiled or overt threat, all of it was painstakingly recorded. My hand, cramped and aching from the continuous writing, protested with sharp spasms, yet I pushed through the pain, fueled by a desperate need for justice, refusing to stop until every last shred of evidence was committed to paper. It felt like hours, an eternity, until Jeff's menacing truck finally rumbled away from the driveway, its taillights disappearing into the inky blackness of midnight. The immediate danger, for now, had receded. Thomas, ever the protector, firmly insisted I sleep in his daughter's room, making up a makeshift bed for me on a camping mattress on the floor, assuring me I'd be safe there. The soft shuffle of my entrance stirred the sleeping girls, and the younger one, her eyes still heavy with sleep, whispered in the darkness, "Are you staying?" Like, for real, I offered a tentative, just tonight, trying to soothe her. But she brightened immediately. "That's what Dad said about us," she chirped, a note of pure, unadulterated happiness in her small voice. "But we've been here 2 whole days now." Her innocent optimism was almost heartbreaking. "Maybe you can stay 2 whole days, too," she suggested, as if it were the most wonderful prospect. I lay there in the unfamiliar dark, listening to the soft, rhythmic cadence of their breathing, a symphony of innocent slumber. In that moment, nestled amidst their gentle presence, I felt a sense of safety and calm more profound than I had experienced in what felt like an eternity, perhaps months. Yet, beneath that burgeoning peace, an icy certainty lingered. Jeff wouldn't simply give up. He was a predator, tenacious and calculating. He would undoubtedly resurface, armed with a new, insidious plan, a fresh arsenal of lies, and even more cunning ways to hurt Thomas, to dismantle our fragile sanctuary, and ultimately, to drag me back into his suffocating grasp. How could I ever truly escape such a relentless shadow? Sure enough, as if on cue, the next morning dawned not with a sense of peace, but with a fresh onslaught of problems, a new battlefront in Jeff's relentless campaign. Thomas woke me early, his face etched with a grim, tight expression that instantly conveyed the gravity of the situation. "Jeff's been busy," he stated, his voice clipped, betraying a deep frustration. "Look," he urged, holding out his phone, its screen glowing with insidious light. The neighborhood Facebook page, once a forum for mundane local chatter, was now ablaze with a deluge of venomous posts and accusations. The comments painted a chilling picture. Thomas was portrayed as a sinister figure, luring me to his house, manipulating an impressionable child. There were fabricated stories about me climbing through his window at night, a blatant attempt to discredit my innocence and Thomas's character. The narrative spun by Jeff was clear. I was merely a troubled child who had concocted elaborate, baseless stories about her loving stepfather. My heart sank as I scrolled through comment after comment, each one a dagger, expressing fervent support for Jeff, vilifying Thomas. "They're believing him," I whispered, the words tasting like ash in my mouth, the sheer injustice a bitter pill. Thomas, however, ever perceptive, quickly interjected, pointing to a few dissenting voices, like flickering candles in a storm. "Some are, yes," he conceded, "but look closely, not everyone, Mrs. Grant, staunch and unwavering, is already out there, bravely defending us, countering his lies. And a few others are bravely stepping forward, admitting they'd noticed unsettling things, too." His words offered a sliver of hope. Just then, his 2 young daughters shuffled downstairs, still sleepy-eyed in their mismatched pajamas, their innocent presence a stark contrast to the ugliness swirling online. "Daddy, can we have pancakes?" the older one, Alexander, asked, her voice bright with childish expectation. Thomas, with a deep breath, knelt down to their level, meeting their gaze with an earnest intensity. "In just a minute, Alexander," he replied, his voice gentle but firm. "First, I need you both, my brave girls, to understand something very important." He paused, searching for the right words. "People might say some very mean and unfair things about Daddy today, about what's happening. But you know the truth, right? You know what kind of person Daddy truly is?" They both nodded solemnly, their small faces serious. The younger one, with an insightful clarity that belied her years, piped up, "You save people, Daddy. Like you saved us from Mommy." A tender smile touched Thomas's lips, a mix of pride and pain. "That's exactly right, sweet pea," he affirmed. "And sometimes, when you bravely try to save people from harm, other people, those who don't understand or who have their own agendas, get very, very angry about it." It was a truth they were too young to fully grasp, yet one they needed to carry. Just then, a car, sleek and unfamiliar, pulled up silently outside, its tires crunching softly on the gravel driveway. Through the window, I watched intently as a woman, impeccably dressed in crisp, professional clothes, emerged from the driver's side, her purposeful stride followed closely by Mrs. Grant. "That's my daughter, Nathaniel," Mrs. Grant announced, her voice brimming with a quiet pride, as Thomas unlatched the door and ushered them inside. She drove a full 2 hours to get here immediately upon hearing what happened. Nathaniel, indeed, appeared to be a younger, more vibrant version of her mother, possessing the same resolute set to her jaw, a clear indicator of her strength and determination. Her gaze, sharp and assessing, met mine across the room. In that instant, her professional composure subtly softened, melting into an expression of profound empathy. "I'm a mandated reporter," she began, her voice calm and authoritative, yet tinged with compassion. "Which means it's my legal obligation to file a report about what has happened to you. But here's the crucial part. I can file it in my county, where Jeff has absolutely no established connections, no influence, no power to tamper with the process." A wave of despair, however, threatened to drown me. "They'll just send me back," I whispered, the crushing weight of past dismissals heavy on my tongue. Nathaniel's eyes, firm and unwavering, locked onto mine. "Not," she declared, her voice imbued with a steel resolve. "Not if we do this right, strategically, with every single step calculated. First, we need to get you to a hospital immediately. It's imperative to document every single injury, every bruise, every cut, with medical precision. Then, and only then, do we systematically file comprehensive reports with multiple, independent agencies, Child Protective Services, the state police, anyone and everyone who will genuinely listen and act." She anticipated Jeff's inevitable counterattack. "He will, without a doubt, claim that Thomas kidnapped you, that you were held against your will. Our task, then, is to definitively prove otherwise." Nathaniel turned to Thomas, her gaze piercing. "Thomas, do you happen to have security cameras, perhaps at your entrance, or around the property?" He nodded, a glimmer of understanding in his eyes. "Yes," he confirmed. "They're motion activated and cover the front and back." "Excellent," Nathaniel responded, a plan rapidly forming in her mind. "That footage will be invaluable. It will show her coming here on her own volition, clearly injured, and actively seeking help. This is undeniable visual evidence." Then, her attention returned to me, her expression a careful blend of encouragement and realism. "Listen," she said, her voice gentle but firm. "This path we're embarking on won't be easy. Jeff is a master manipulator, and he will fight back with every ounce of his cunning and influence. He will undoubtedly try to discredit everyone who steps forward to help you, to paint us all as liars. Are you truly prepared for that inevitable, arduous battle? Are you ready to face the storm?" In that pivotal moment, a chilling montage flashed through my mind, the suffocating thought of retreating, of enduring countless more nights under Jeff's oppressive shadow. His very presence a physical weight. I envisioned my mother, again and again, choosing his lies, his comfort, his warped narrative over my safety, my truth, my very well-being. The crushing realization that going back meant reliving that nightmare, meant surrendering to an inescapable cycle of abuse and betrayal, solidified my resolve. With a surge of newfound strength, a quiet fire igniting within me, I met Nathaniel's gaze, my voice clear and unwavering. "I'm ready," I declared, the words a powerful affirmation, a battle cry against my past. "I'm absolutely ready." The next few hours, a whirlwind of activity, blurred into an almost surreal sequence of events. First, there was the hospital, an antiseptic but welcoming sanctuary, where a kind, empathetic nurse, her face etched with concern, meticulously took clear, irrefutable photos of every single bruise, every laceration, every visible mark of the pain Jeff had inflicted upon me, documenting the grim tapestry of my suffering. Then, we moved to the police station in the next county, a place of unexpected refuge where, astonishingly, the officers didn't just hear my words, they actually listened, their expressions conveying genuine attentiveness and belief. Nathaniel, our unwavering champion, was there through it all, her presence a constant source of strength and guidance, navigating us through the bureaucratic labyrinth, ensuring every step was taken with precision and purpose. Her expertise was a shield, her determination a beacon, lighting our way forward into an uncertain, yet hopeful, future. We had been filing report after report, making what felt like an endless barrage of calls, stubbornly refusing to let anyone, any bureaucratic gatekeeper, dismiss the gravity of our situation. Yet, Jeff, far from being idle, was working just as tirelessly, albeit with a far more insidious agenda. By that afternoon, with a chilling efficiency, he had managed to convince at least half the neighborhood the very people we shared fences and sidewalk space with that Thomas was not just some concerned citizen, but a dangerous predator. A man who had not only kidnapped his own daughters but was now, chillingly, setting his sights on me. His whispers and fabricated stories had taken root so deeply that he'd even successfully coerced some parents into yanking their kids inside, their faces etched with fear, whenever Thomas simply walked by on the street. "He's isolating us," Thomas murmured, his voice heavy with a grim realization, as he watched from the veiled privacy of his window. He observed the furtive whispers, the pointed fingers, the way a once familiar community was turning its back, erecting an invisible barrier that made it exponentially harder for us to secure the support we so desperately needed. Just then, his phone, a persistent harbinger of ill tidings, rang. It was the school, their tone regrettably official, informing him that his daughters, sweet and innocent, couldn't return to their classrooms until the situation was resolved, a phrase that hung in the air, heavy with unspoken accusations. Then, almost immediately, another call. This time, his job, cloaked in a thinly veiled suggestion, advised him to take some time off while things were sorted out, a thinly disguised suspension, a professional ostracization. "He's trying to destroy you," I asserted, the words tasting like ash in my mouth, the weight of my own guilt a crushing burden. "Because of me, Thomas. This is all because of me." Thomas looked at me, his eyes tired but firm. "He's trying to silence you," he corrected gently, drawing a subtle but crucial distinction between my safety and his professional ruin. "There's a difference." But even through his comforting words, I could clearly see the profound strain on his face, the invisible lines of worrying deepening around his eyes. In the background, his daughters, ensconced in the vibrant, escapist world of cartoons, remained blissfully oblivious to the insidious ways their own secure, familiar world was rapidly shrinking around them. That evening, the simmering tensions boiled over, escalating with an alarming speed. We were attempting to eat dinner, a fragile attempt at normalcy, when a cacophony of angry shouting erupted from outside, shattering the quiet of our meal. A sizable group of neighbors had gathered, like a small, agitated mob, in Jeff's yard, their faces illuminated by the porch light as they raptly listened to him spin his latest, most venomous tales. He's had those girls for 3 days now? Jeff's voice, amplified by the evening air, carried with piercing clarity across the divide between our yards, each word a calculated jab. Won't even let their own mother see them. He paused for dramatic effect, letting that lie sink in, before plunging to the next. And now he's got my stepdaughter in there, filling her head with terrible lies about me, turning her against her family. A chorus of murmurs rose from the crowd. We should call CPS, someone suggested, their voice laced with righteous indignation. Jeff, ever the smooth operator, merely nodded, feigning a weary sigh. I did, he lied effortlessly, the untruth sliding off his tongue. They're investigating him, but these things take time, don't they? And meanwhile, our children aren't safe. Thomas, a silent storm brewing behind his eyes, walked over and closed the curtains, a futile attempt to block out the rising tide of hostility. But even with the fabric drawn, we could still hear them, their voices a chilling hum, planning patrols, discussing shifts to watch his house, all under the guise of protecting their kids from the dangerous man next door. Dad, Alexander's tiny voice quivered with apprehension, her eyes wide with a fear that tore at my heart. Are they talking about you? Thomas knelt, pulling her close. Yes, sweetheart, he acknowledged, his voice soft but firm. But remember what I said. Sometimes people believe lies, not because they are true, but because they are easier to believe than the complicated, often uncomfortable truth. Just then, his phone buzzed. A sharp vibration against the quiet, a text from an unknown number. Give her back or things get worse. The words glowed ominously on the screen. Then another, almost immediately. You think you've had it bad. Wait until tomorrow. He's threatening you, I whispered, my voice tight with anger, as I read over his shoulder, the venom of the text chilling me to the bone. Thomas, however, a flicker of grim determination in his eyes, simply responded, good. Threats leave evidence. He meticulously screenshot everything, every hateful word, every menacing promise. Let him dig his own grave, he muttered, but I could see the profound toll it was taking, the relentless erosion of his peace, the visible lines of stress deepening on his face. Thomas had, with undeniable courage, saved his own daughters from abuse, and he had saved me from a life of torment. Now, in a cruel and twisted reprisal, Jeff was systematically, meticulously, destroying his life in return. That night, the low murmur of his voice on the phone with his lawyer drifted from the other room, painting a bleak picture. His ex-wife, opportunistic and relentless, was exploiting the current chaos, using it as leverage to file for full custody once again. The neighborhood complaints, those manufactured whispers and accusations, were being meticulously added to her case, compounding the legal challenges. The bitter irony wasn't lost on me. Even though Thomas had courageously saved his daughters from the very real threat of abuse, he now faced the agonizing prospect of losing them. All because he had also dared to try and save me, a stranger in his life until recently. I found him later, after the call had ended, sitting alone on his back porch, a solitary figure in the dim light, his head buried in his hands. I'm sorry, I whispered, the words barely audible, heavy with a self-reproach that felt almost unbearable. I've ruined everything for you. He looked up, his eyes, usually kind, now burning with a fierce, raw intensity. No, Thomas, he corrected, his voice raspy with emotion. Jeff ruined everything. Your mother ruined everything. The system that consistently fails kids like you, that allows predators to thrive, that ruined everything. You did nothing wrong. He took a deep, shuddering breath. Then, a flicker of his unwavering resolve returning, he added, but my daughters will be fine. I've fought for them before. I'll fight again. They're my world. He managed a tired, strained smile, a fragile bulwark against the rising tide of despair. Besides, Nathaniel says our case is strong. The hospital documented extensive, irrefutable injuries. And the police in her county, the ones actually investigating Jeff for his crimes, are taking it very seriously. Jeff's going to have far bigger problems than just spreading rumors soon. As if on cue, a sudden, sharp ring from his phone broke the tense silence. It was Nathaniel. They're moving tonight, she exclaimed, her voice crackling with excitement through the speaker, a jolt of anticipation through the oppressive atmosphere. The state police want to arrest Jeff before he has any time to destroy evidence or intimidate more witnesses. They'll be there within the hour. My heart, which had been a leaden weight in my chest, suddenly pounded with a surge of adrenaline, a frantic, hopeful rhythm. This was it, the climax. The moment of truth. Either they would believe us, truly see the truth we held, and Jeff would finally, definitively, face the justice he so richly deserved, or what if he managed to convince them too? I asked, the chilling possibility still lingering like a phantom dread. He won't, Nathaniel declared firmly, her voice radiating an unshakable confidence. I've made absolutely sure the right people are handling this. Officers who specialize in these exact kinds of cases, who know precisely how predators operate, how they manipulate, how they lie. We waited, our gaze fixed on the relentless march of the clock. each tick echoing loudly in the suffocating silence. 40 minutes passed, then 50. Then a heart-stopping realization as blue and red lights, a sudden, blinding kaleidoscope, filled the street. But they weren't heading for Jeff's house. They pulled up, with an agonizing certainty, directly to Thomas. My stomach dropped, a sickening lurch of despair, as the police car doors swung open. 2 officers stepped out, their faces unreadable, stark and anonymous in the flashing, strobing lights. Thomas squeezed my shoulder, a grounding, steady pressure, before walking towards the front door. Stay here with the girls, he said quietly, his voice a calm anchor in the rising storm. Whatever happens, remember we have the truth on our side. But as he opened the door, my blood ran cold, a chilling tableau unfolding before my eyes. Standing directly behind the officers, a perfectly crafted facade of victimhood in place, was Jeff. His face was arranged in a mask of profound, exaggerated concern, his eyes wide with feigned worrying. Officers, thank God you're here, Jeff said, his voice dripping with syrupy, feigned relief, each word a calculated accusation. My stepdaughter has been missing for over 24 hours. This man has been filling her head with terrible lies about me, turning her against her own family. The lead officer, a tall woman with a no-nonsense demeanor and streaks of gray in her hair, shifted her unyielding gaze between Jeff's manufactured distress and Thomas's quiet, controlled composure. Sir, she began, her tone crisp and official. We received a report that you're harboring a runaway minor and 2 children who were removed from their mother's custody. They're my daughters, Thomas stated calmly. His voice a quiet yet firm declaration, unwavering in the face of the accusation. And I have extensive documentation showing their mother was abusing them. As for this young girl, he gestured subtly towards me. She came to me for help after being assaulted by her stepfather. Jeff's face, a masterclass in manipulation. Contorted with a practiced anguish, a visceral twisting of his features designed to elicit sympathy. See, he cried, his voice laced with heartbreak. He's turned her against me. I've raised that girl for 3 years. I coach her friends' softball teams. Ask anyone in this neighborhood. I am a pillar of this community. A blatant attempt to leverage his perceived respectability against the undeniable truth. The second officer, a younger man with a thick, well-groomed mustache, shifted uncomfortably, a telltale twitch of discomfort on his face. We need to see the children, sir, he interjected, his voice firm. All of them. Thomas hesitated for a moment, then stepped aside, allowing a clearer view into the house. They're inside, he conceded, but added, his gaze flicking to Jeff. But I'm not leaving them alone with him. As we walked into the living room, a silent huddle of vulnerability. Alexander and her sister instinctively pressed closer against me, sensing the palpable tension that permeated the air. The officer's eyes swept over us, taking a silent inventory of their surroundings, the girls' fading bruises, still visible even beneath their clothes. My notebook, an accidental piece of evidence. Still resting on the coffee table, the crumpled blanket I'd instinctively wrapped myself in the night before, a silent testament to fear and desperation. She needs to come home, Jeff insisted, his voice suddenly sharp, as he reached out a hand towards me, a movement that was both possessive and unsettling. Her mother is worried sick. I flinched away from him, an almost involuntary spasm of revulsion, and the female officer's perceptive gaze immediately caught the subtle movement. Miss, are you hurt? She asked, her voice sudden and sharp, cutting through the manufactured drama. The I could answer. Jeff jumped in, his words a dismissive, condescending wave of his hand, a manipulative deflection. She's always been dramatic, makes up stories for attention. That's why we've been considering therapy. I have hospital records from this morning, Thomas stated calmly, pulling out a weighty folder. Its contents irrefutable proof, documenting my injuries with clinical precision. And these, he continued, extracting another set of documents and photographs, are photos of my daughter's injuries from their mother's abuse. The male officer's gaze, previously uncertain, now sharpened with an undeniable gravity, absorbing the stark, visual narrative of suffering. He barely had time to process. The officer, a burly man with a weary gaze, barely spared a glance for the meticulously assembled papers, his eyes sweeping over them with an air of practiced dismissal. Sir, this appears to be a matter best addressed by the family court system, he stated flatly, his voice devoid of any warmth or genuine concern, as if reciting a well-rehearsed mantra. Our immediate directive is simply to return this minor to the custody of her legal guardians. The word struck me like a physical blow, igniting a desperate, primal scream within. But he hurt me, I cried, the words bursting from my lips in a frantic, unbidden torrent, raw and unfiltered. He comes into my room at night. He touches me. A shiver ran down my spine as I struggled to articulate the unspeakable terror of those nocturnal invasions. She's confused, Jeff interjected smoothly, his voice a calm, reassuring bomb designed to soothe the officers and undermine my testimony. He seemed to effortlessly wrest control of the chaotic narrative, his interruption precise and perfectly timed. Thomas here, he continued, gesturing with a dismissive flick of his wrist towards Thomas, has been systematically feeding her these wild ideas, polluting her mind with fabricated narratives. He then delivered a calculated blow, a cynical jab designed to entirely discredit Thomas. He even lost custody of his own children, officers. What, I ask you, does that tell you about his character and his motives? The question hung in the air, thick with insinuation, a poisoned dart aimed directly at Thomas's credibility. The female officer, her expression a careful blend of professional neutrality and feigned empathy, then knelt, bringing herself down to my eye level. "Sweetheart," she began, her voice softened, though I could still detect an underlying note of skepticism. "Has Mr. Thomas ever touched you inappropriately?" Her gaze was probing, seeking a specific answer. "No." I practically shouted, shaking my head violently, my voice cracking with indignant frustration. "Thomas saved me. Jeff is the one who," but before I could complete the damning accusation, Jeff, ever vigilant, cut in again, his voice rising with a new, urgent narrative. "Officers, I have corroborating text messages right here, from my wife," he declared, already fumbling for his phone. "Our daughter, you see, has been exhibiting some troubling behaviors lately. She's been acting out, as they say, telling increasingly fantastical stories at school, clearly seeking attention." He paused for dramatic effect, letting his insidious theory take root. "We strongly suspect Thomas has been grooming her, preying upon her youthful innocence and taking advantage of her obvious emotional vulnerability." With a flourish that bespoke both confidence and calculated malice, Jeff produced his phone, presenting the screen to the officers. It displayed what, to the untrained eye, appeared to be a genuine, concerned conversation with my mother, a carefully crafted digital illusion. My heart plummeted like a stone through ice water, a sickening realization dawning upon me. He hadn't just reacted to the situation, he had meticulously prepared for it. While we, in our desperate struggle for justice, had been painstakingly building a foundation of truth and tangible evidence, Jeff had been assiduously constructing a parallel universe of deceit, fabricating false evidence to bolster his lies. The sheer premeditation of his actions sent a cold wave of despair washing over me. The younger officer, his face initially impassive, scanned the text messages, his expression visibly hardening with each line he absorbed. The subtle shift was chilling, signaling that Jeff's fabricated narrative was taking root. "Sir," he addressed Thomas, his voice now clipped and authoritative. "I'm going to need you to step outside, please, while we endeavor to sort this matter out." It was an order, not a request, clearly designed to isolate Thomas. "I am absolutely not leaving these children alone with him," Thomas retorted, his voice unwavering, a steel edge of resolve beneath the protest. His stance was defiant, a testament to his fierce protectiveness. The officer's eyes narrowed, a glint of annoyance flashing within them. "Are you refusing to comply with police instructions, sir?" He pressed, his hand deliberately, pointedly, moving to rest on his utility belt, a silent, yet unmistakable, threat of escalation. As if guided by some unseen force, Nathaniel chose that precise, critical moment to make her entrance, her presence a sudden, unexpected beacon of hope. Mrs. Grant, her colleague, was right behind her, adding an air of official gravitas. "Officers," Nathaniel announced, her voice clear and commanding, cutting through the tense silence. "I am a social worker with Riverside County Child Protective Services. I have been meticulously documenting this case for some time now. This child," she continued, her gaze unwavering, "has explicitly disclosed severe, sustained abuse at the hands of her stepfather. For a fleeting, almost imperceptible instant, Jeff's carefully constructed mask of concerned innocence fractured. A raw, visceral flash of uncontrolled anger blazed in his eyes, a stark glimpse of the predator beneath, before he expertly reasserted his composure, his default expression of wounded empathy snapping back into place. "More people he's manipulated," I thought, a chilling wave of dread washing over me. "This is precisely what I've been terrified of. He's not just spinning individual lies, he's actively constructing an entire network of complicit individuals to lend credence to his monstrous deceptions. And I have irrefutable photographic evidence," Nathaniel declared, her voice firm, as she held up her phone, displaying a gallery of stark, undeniable images. "These were taken at Riverside General Hospital just this morning. The pictures depicted what could only be described as disturbing bruises, a silent testament to the violence I had endured. But Jeff, ever the master of deflection, was quick as a viper. Bruising consistent with assault. Yes, he conceded with a dismissive wave of his hand, but most likely self-inflicted, officers," he added, his words tumbling out in a rush. "A desperate attempt to preempt the truth. Or perhaps," he mused, a venomous suggestion dripping from his tone, "Thomas, in his warped attempt to make me look bad, inflicted them upon her himself." He then pivoted, his voice taking on a tone of great urgency. "Officers, I implore you, every single minute, every second she is permitted to spend in his company, he is irrevocably poisoning her mind, turning her further and further against her own family." The female officer, her face a canvas of evident conflict, slowly straightened, her gaze sweeping between the conflicting parties. We must adhere strictly to protocol," she announced, her voice tinged with regret, yet firm. "The child, under these circumstances, must be returned to her legal guardians while any official investigations proceed." "No," I shrieked, my voice raw with terror, clutching onto Thomas's arm as if he were my only anchor in a storm. Please, don't make me go back." "He'll hurt me again. He said he would," he said. My words tumbled out in a frantic, desperate torrent, a plea wrenched from the depths of my soul. Jeff, seizing the opportunity, shook his head with a sorrowful, practiced sigh, his expression a carefully cultivated mask of weary concern. "You see how hysterical she becomes," he murmured, addressing the officers with a knowing look. This, precisely, is what I've been trying to explain. Thomas has her utterly brainwashed, her perceptions completely distorted. Just then, Thomas's own daughters, sensing the gravity of the situation, began to wail, clinging to their father's legs, their small faces streaked with tears. The scene erupted into pure, unadulterated chaos. The piercing cries of terrified children, the heated arguments of desperate adults, and the overwhelmed police officers attempting, with increasing futility, to impose some semblance of order. And amidst this maelstrom, Jeff remained a chillingly serene figure, his face etched with that same impeccably crafted expression of deep concern, playing the role of the worried stepfather with an unnerving perfection. "Everyone, please calm down," the female officer commanded, her voice cutting sharply through the cacophony, a desperate attempt to reassert control over the spiraling situation. Her gaze fixed on Thomas, she reiterated the stark reality. "Sir, I genuinely understand your concerns. I do. However, without a formal court order explicitly stating otherwise, our hands are tied. We are legally obligated to return this minor to her designated legal guardians." Nathaniel, ever the pragmatist, immediately seized upon the legal loophole. "Then get a court order," she interjected, her voice ringing with professional authority. "I will immediately file for emergency temporary custody. Just grant us a mere 24 hours to secure it. That's all we ask." But Jeff, always a step ahead, had another card to play, another layer to his deceitful narrative. "Mom," he announced, a note of performative sorrow in his voice, "is all ready en route to pick her up. She's absolutely devastated, officers. She hasn't slept a wink, racked with worrying, ever since her daughter disappeared." Then, as if a meticulously rehearsed theatrical cue had been delivered, a car pulled up sharply outside the residence. It was Mom's. She emerged from the vehicle, and I was struck by a sickening jolt of disbelief, bordering on profound shock, to see that her face was stained with what appeared to be genuine tears. Her meticulously applied makeup was now smeared in grotesque trails, her usually impeccable hair disheveled and wild. In that moment, she presented the perfect tableau of a distraught, worried mother, a stark, almost unrecognizable contrast to the woman who, time and again, had callously dismissed my desperate, whispered pleas for help, turning a deaf ear to my suffering. "My baby," she wailed, her voice a theatrical crescendo of relief and anguish, rushing towards me with outstretched arms. "Oh, thank God you're safe." I was so utterly terrified, I instinctively recoiled, attempting to create distance, but she lunged, seizing me with surprising force and pulling me into a suffocating, almost predatory hug that trapped me, stealing my breath. "Mom, please," I choked out, desperate for her to truly see me, to finally believe. "Jeff hurt me. You have to believe me." But her response was a swift, dismissive pat on my head. "Shh, honey, it's okay," she cooed, her voice saccharine sweet. "You're just confused. Thomas, he's the one who put all these outlandish ideas into your little head, but you're safe now. You're home." Over her shoulder, through the tangled mess of her disheveled hair, I caught Jeff's gaze. A faint, almost imperceptible smile played at the corners of his lips, a chilling, triumphant smirk that spoke volumes. He had won this round, undeniably, and he knew it. The satisfaction gleamed in his eyes like a malevolent spark. "Ma'am," the female officer interjected, turning her attention to my mother, "has your daughter made these specific allegations before now?" Mom's performance, as expected, was utterly flawless. A masterclass in calculated deception. "Oh, yes, officer," she sighed, her voice laced with what sounded like genuine exhaustion. "She's been really struggling lately, acting out quite a bit, you see. We honestly believe it's largely due to the trauma of the divorce from her biological father." She then shifted to Jeff, her words dripping with praise. "And Jeff? He's been nothing short of a saint, truly so incredibly patient and loving with her, despite everything." "That's not true," I cried, renewed strength surging through me as I struggled against her relentless grip, kicking and twisting. "You know what he does, Mom. You have to know." Thomas, his voice raspy with raw desperation, appealed to the officers. "Officers, I have an extensive body of documentation here. Months of meticulous observation, corroborating photographs, detailed notes outlining the escalating danger. This child is undeniably in peril." But Jeff, anticipating this move, delivered another crushing blow. "And I have a restraining order," he announced, pulling out yet another sheaf of papers with a flourish. "Filed just this morning, officers. This man, Thomas, has been systematically stalking my family, surreptitiously taking pictures of my stepdaughter, even openly watching our house, a clear and present threat to our safety." The officers, their faces now grim and resolved, meticulously examined the freshly minted paperwork. I watched, my heart hammering against my ribs, as their expressions subtly but undeniably shifted, their eyes mirroring the growing conviction that Jeff's meticulously constructed narrative, however false, was the compelling one. Thomas, in that moment, looked utterly stricken, his face paling as the crushing realization dawned on him. Jeff had not merely fought back, he had ruthlessly, expertly outmaneuvered us at every turn. "Sir," the male officer stated, his voice now devoid of any compromise, "you are officially required to stay away from this family. Furthermore, we will unfortunately need to notify Child Protective Services regarding your own daughter's situation." Thomas, reeling but still fighting, protested vehemently. "My daughters are documented abuse victims. I have all their custody papers, their medical records, which we will certainly review." The officer cut him off, his tone dismissive, impatient. "But right now, this child needs to go home." Immediately, the decision was absolute, a door slamming shut on any hope. Mom, her grip like a vice, began to forcibly pull me towards the front door, her determination cold and unyielding. I dug my heels in, refusing to budge, frantically grabbing onto any piece of furniture I could reach a table leg, the armrest of a sofa, fighting with every fiber of my being, a desperate, primal struggle against the inevitable. No, please. A scream, tears streaming down my face. He'll hurt me, Thomas. Don't let them take me. Thomas, his eyes blazing with a mixture of fury and despair, lunged forward, clearly intending to intervene and shield me. But the male officer, a formidable barrier of uniformed authority, instantly stepped between us, his hand once again moving ominously to his belt. Sir, do not interfere, he commanded, his voice a low, dangerous rumble. It was in that agonizing moment that Alexander, Thomas's younger daughter, her small face contorted with fear and anguish, let out a piercing cry that momentarily froze the chaotic scene. Dad, she wailed, her voice echoing with a raw, heartbreaking truth. Don't let them take her. She's scared just like we were scared of Mommy. Alexander's innocent, yet profoundly damning words, laden with a past trauma, hung heavy in the air, a chilling echo that pierced the din. The female officer actually paused, her gaze flicking towards the distraught little girl, and for a split second, I saw a flicker of fleeting spark of doubt, perhaps even dawning realization in her eyes. But Jeff, ever the opportunist, was ready, poised to crush any burgeoning empathy. See, he exclaimed, his voice laced with faint exasperation, he's even dragged his own children into his twisted delusions, isn't he? Officers, this man is not just misguided, he is genuinely dangerous. Who knows what insidious ideas he's been putting into the heads of those girls, what he's been subjecting them to. That cynical, calculated insinuation, directed at his own daughters, seemed to be the final, decisive blow. The female officer's expression, which had briefly softened, now hardened irrevocably, a mask of unyielding officialdom returning. Sir, she declared, her tone crisp and unfeeling, we're going to need you and your daughters to accompany us to the station for further questioning. What? Thomas stammered, his face a portrait of utter disbelief and profound shock. I am standing here, actively trying to protect an innocent child from unimaginable abuse, and you are treating me like a criminal. Just routine questions, sir, she stated, but the cold, unyielding edge in her voice, the steely glint in her eyes, betrayed the comforting facade. Her tone suggested something far more ominous than mere administrative inquiry. Meanwhile, Mom, her strength surprising and unyielding, had already succeeded in dragging me closer to the doorway, her grip bruising, her focus solely on extracting me from the house. With a surge of adrenaline, fueled by pure, unadulterated terror, I mustered every last ounce of my dwindling strength. I made one desperate, almost primal attempt at escape, twisting violently, tearing free from her grasp with a sudden, unexpected burst of defiance, and ran. Where the immediate future, or any semblance of safety, remained a terrifying blank. Nathaniel, please, I pleaded, my voice barely a tremor against his chest as I clung to him, a desperate anchor in a swirling storm of fear. You said you'd help. You promised you'd file reports, that you'd tell someone. Don't let them take me back, please. Don't let them. Nathaniel, despite his own terror, held me tighter, a small, futile gesture against the encroaching darkness. Then, Jeff's voice, smooth and deceptively calm, cut through the tension like a razor. I am filing reports, he assured, his tone laced with a chilling confidence that dismissed my pleas as mere childish dramatics. But I can't stop the police from returning you to your legal guardians. Not without a court order, which, let's be realistic, he added, a patronizing smirk playing on his lips, she won't get. His gaze was unwavering, daring me to challenge his pronouncement. Why? Because, as he saw it, the world operated on a simple, cynical truth. Judges don't just hand over custody to random social workers based on a troubled child's lies. His words, sharp as shards of glass, were meant to shatter any remaining hope, reinforcing the terrifying notion that my truth was merely a fabrication, a symptom of my own supposed instability, easily dismissed by the powerful. A male officer, his face impassive, stepped forward, his presence a wall between me and Nathaniel. He gently, yet with an unyielding firmness that left no room for resistance, separated my desperate grip from Nathaniel. Come on, miss, he murmured, his voice flat, devoid of real warmth or understanding. Time to go home. As they steered me out of Thomas's house, a forced march toward my own personal hell, I couldn't help but scan the street. Every window, every driveway seemed to be occupied by the silent, judging spectatorish neighbors. Their faces, once familiar, were now a grotesque tableau of satisfaction. Jeff, with his insidious charm and carefully crafted narratives, had turned them all into an unwitting jury condemning Thomas without a fair trial. They looked utterly content, their expressions smug, even righteous, as they watched the predator Thomas being questioned by police, while the concerned parents, my mother and Jeff, rescued their innocent child. Oh, the bitter irony of it all, a twisted morality play orchestrated by a master manipulator. Mom, her earlier performance of maternal distress now completely shed, wasted no time. She pushed me, not gently guided, but pushed me into the backseat of her car, the sudden force jarring me against the cold leather. Through the window, a cruel, reflective barrier, I watched the police leading Thomas and his daughters, bewildered and broken, toward their patrol car. Alexander, her small, fragile hand pressed desperately against the glass, was a mirror of my own despair. Tears streamed relentlessly down her face, carving paths of sorrow on her dusty cheeks. Our eyes walked across the distance, a silent, profound understanding passing between us. To children, utterly failed by the very adults who were meant to shield and protect us, abandoned to the mercy of a world that refused to believe our pain. The drive home was an oppressive expanse of silence, thick and suffocating, broken only by Mom's occasional, theatrical sniffles. Her grand performance, the one designed for the police and the neighbors, had ended the precise moment we rounded the corner, leaving Thomas's street behind. The mask had slipped, revealing the cold, hardened face beneath. When we pulled into our driveway, the sight waiting for us was a stark tableau of control. Jeff was already there, a sentinel of malevolence, standing by the front door with his arms crossed over his chest, a posture that radiated triumph and absolute authority. He looked like a spider waiting for its fly. "Go to your room," Mom commanded, her voice stripped of all warmth, sharp as an icicle. "We'll deal with you later." The implied threat hung heavy in the air, a promise of impending retribution. I bolted inside, desperate to escape, but Jeff moved with predatory swiftness. He caught my arm in the narrow hallway, his grip bruising. He leaned in close, his hot, fetid breath a repulsive cloud on my ear, a whisper of menace. "You think you're smart, don't you?" He sneered, his voice low, venomous. "You just made things so much worse for yourself, and for Thomas." With a final, contemptuous shove that sent me stumbling, he released me. I scrambled to my room, slamming the door behind me with a resounding thud that echoed my inner turmoil, and collapsed onto my bed, utterly spent. From beyond the door, the low murmur of Mom and Jeff's voices, hushed and conspiratorial, seeped into my sanctuary. They were plotting, I knew, meticulously planning their next move in this cruel game they called life. An hour later, the door creaked open without the courtesy of a knock. Mom entered, her presence an intrusion. She sat on the edge of my bed, but her expression was devoid of any motherly warmth, any flicker of concern. It was cold, calculating, a chilling mask of strategic thought. "Do you have any idea what you've done?" she began, her voice a low, dangerous growl. Jeff's reputation could have been utterly ruined. We could have lost everything, our comfortable life, his influence, everything he's built, my own pain, my own truth, was a negligible footnote in her narrative of impending financial and social ruin. "He hurts me," I whispered, the words barely audible, a fragile truth against her formidable denial. "You know he does." The stinging slap that followed was not hard enough to leave a visible mark, a testament to her calculated cruelty, but it was sharp enough, sudden enough, to shock me, to rattle my very bones. "Jeff provides for us," she hissed, her eyes blazing with an almost manic intensity. "He loves us. And you tried to destroy him with your lies." "They're not lies." I wanted to scream, but the words caught in my throat, choked by the injustice. "The police think they are," she retorted, her voice dripping with dismissive finality. "The neighbors think they are. Everyone thinks they are except that creep next door who's probably going to jail for kidnapping his own daughters." She stood, looming over me, a terrifying figure of absolute authority. "You're grounded," she declared, the pronouncement a sentence of solitary confinement. "No phone, no computer, no leaving this room except for school and meals. And if you dare to tell anyone else these lies, things will get much, much worse, for you and for Thomas." With that chilling threat hanging in the air, she departed, the ominous click of the lock from the outside sealing my fate. I listened helpless, as her footsteps faded down the hallway. Then, Jeff's heavier, more deliberate tread approached, stopping just outside my door. He didn't enter, he didn't need to. His voice, a low, guttural murmur, was enough. "Sweet dreams, princess," he purred, and I could distinctly hear the sickening, predatory smile woven into his words. "We have all the time in the world now." The implication, chilling and explicit, sent shivers down my spine. I curled into a tight ball, burying myself beneath my blankets, desperate to disappear. Thomas, I knew, was at the police station, his life in shambles. His daughters were likely being dragged back to their abusive mother, their cries unheard. And I was trapped, a prisoner in my own home, more utterly alone than I had ever been. The next few days bled into an indistinguishable nightmare of isolation, each hour a monotonous, torturous repetition of the last. Jeff, ever the architect of my torment, had installed a new lock on my door, a grim, undeniable symbol of his complete control. This one, unlike any ordinary lock, could only be secured from the outside. He dictated my every movement, granting or denying permission to leave my room for the barest necessities, his omnipresent gaze a constant, suffocating weight. Always watching, always smiling, that terrible, knowing smile, a chilling tableau of possession and power that haunted my waking hours and invaded my dreams. At school, driven by a desperate, fleeting flicker of hope, I tried to confide in my teacher, to unravel the tangled web of lies Jeff had spun. But he, ever one step ahead, had already gotten there first. He'd met with the principal, a carefully orchestrated preemptive strike. He painted me as a troubled, acting out child, prone to fabricating terrible stories about him, suggesting that Thomas, the sinister neighbor, had been poisoning my mind with falsehoods. The teachers, once empathetic, now looked at me with a soft, pitying gaze, utterly devoid of genuine concern. "Your stepfather is worried about you," my teacher offered gently, her voice dripping with misplaced sympathy, effectively dismissing my truth as a symptom of adolescent angst. "Perhaps you should talk to the school counselor about why you're saying these things." The referral was not an act of help, but a polite dismissal. The counselor, I soon discovered, was no better. Jeff, with his calculated charm, had already briefed her, meticulously crafting a narrative where he was the concerned, beleaguered father dealing with a difficult, troubled child. Every word I uttered, every desperate attempt to articulate the truth of my abuse, was filtered through that distorted lens, twisted and reinterpreted to fit his narrative. Sometimes when we're upset, we create stories to explain our feelings, she suggested, her tone patronizingly gentle, her eyes studying me as if I were a psychological puzzle. Have you been feeling angry about your parents' divorce, perhaps? This isn't about the divorce, I insisted, my voice tight with frustration, trying to steer her back to the horrifying reality. Jeff touches me. He comes into my room. He has Mr. Thomas been telling you to say these things? She interrupted smoothly, her expression hardening, her gaze suddenly suspicious. Your stepfather mentioned he's been showing concerning interest in you, planting ideas. It was a masterpiece of manipulation, a preemptive counteraccusation designed to discredit me entirely. In that moment, a crushing weight of despair settled upon me. I gave up. Jeff had poisoned everyone against me, just as effectively and insidiously as he had poisoned their minds against Thomas. Through whispered conversations I overheard, furtive scraps of information gleaned from the periphery of adult interactions, I pieced together Thomas's tragic fate. The police, undoubtedly influenced by Jeff's relentless campaign, had questioned him for hours, systematically dismantling his reputation and his life. His ex-wife, a predatory figure in this unfolding drama, had arrived with her lawyer, demanding the immediate return of her daughters. Without fresh bruises to serve as undeniable proof of abuse, and armed with Jeff's carefully constructed narrative of Thomas's supposed instability and concerning behavior, she had successfully convinced the police that Thomas had kidnapped his own children during her custodial time. The girls, poor Alexander and her sister, had been returned to their abusive mother, a fate I knew was worse than any prison. Thomas had been released, but not without a chilling warning. He was to stay away from all children in the neighborhood, a blanket accusation that painted him as a pariah, a danger. A restraining order, a concrete manifestation of Jeff's power, now legally barred him from coming within 500 feet of our property. Yet, despite this devastating blow, Thomas, with an unwavering spirit that astonished me, didn't give up. Sometimes, I'd catch glimpses of him. He'd walk his dog, a deliberate, quiet ritual, precisely at the invisible boundary of the restraining order. He would look towards our house, a silent question in his gaze, and I, confined to my window, would try to signal him a desperate, silent plea for help, for understanding. But Jeff, with his ever-vigilant, malicious eyes, always noticed. Seems like Thomas can't take a hint, can he? He mused one evening, his voice a low, dangerous growl as he materialized behind me at my window, his breath a chilling phantom on my neck. Maybe I need to help him understand a little better. The unspoken threat hung heavy in the air, a cold promise of escalating retribution. The very next day, Thomas's car tires were found slashed, deflated symbols of violated boundaries. The day after that, a stark, damning word predator was spray-painted in angry, black letters across his garage door, a public accusation designed to shame and isolate him further. Jeff, of course, had airtight alibis for both incidents. He'd been at work, surrounded by dozens of witnesses, a carefully constructed fortress of plausible deniability. Yet, I knew he was behind it. With the same chilling certainty I knew he was orchestrating the sudden, crippling problems Thomas faced at work. The anonymous, insidious complaints sent to his employer about his concerning behavior around children, meticulously designed to dismantle his professional life. 2 weeks after I had been forced back into my prison home, everything escalated, the slow, suffocating dread transforming into outright terror. Jeff had started his nighttime visits again, each one a fresh descent into a deeper, darker abyss, each one worse than the last, a relentless assault on my body and spirit. The preceding night had been particularly harrowing, a chilling preview of the escalating terror. In a desperate attempt to fortify my sanctuary, I had painstakingly barricaded my bedroom door with every piece of furniture I could muster, a wobbly chair, a heavy dresser pushed against it. Yet, my futile efforts were swiftly undone. He'd effortlessly dismantled my makeshift defenses while I was away at school, leaving the door ominously accessible. That same night, as darkness consumed the house, a spine-chilling sound pierced the oppressive silence, the deliberate, measured cadence of his footsteps approaching down the hallway, each thud echoing the escalating dread in my chest. My breath hitched, a silent scream caught in my throat. But then, a flicker of the unexpected, a deviation from the familiar horror, a gentle, almost hesitant tapping at my window pane. It was a sound so incongruous with the pervasive menace that it momentarily disarmed my fear, replacing it with a jolt of bewildering curiosity. Who could it possibly be? Propelled by a fragile sliver of hope, I scrambled across the room, my heart hammering against my ribs. Peeking through the curtains, my eyes widened in astonished relief. It was Mrs. Grant, our kind neighbor, a beacon of unexpected defiance against the encroaching darkness, standing amidst the dewy grass of our backyard. She held a flashlight, its beam a solitary sentinel against the oppressive night, and her lips formed a silent, urgent plea. Open the window. My gaze darted to the window, the very one Jeff had meticulously secured, cementing my imprisonment. I fumbled with the stubborn lock he had clearly fortified, its mechanism stiff and unyielding, a testament to his pervasive control. After a frantic struggle, my fingers aching, I finally managed to wrench it open just a few precarious inches, creating a narrow chasm between my confinement and the outside world. Her words, though barely audible, were imbued with a frantic urgency that cut through the night like a sharp blade. Thomas sent me, she hissed, her voice a strained whisper, burdened with the weight of her secret mission. He can't come himself, you understand, not with that draconian restraining order hanging over his head like a guillotine. But we know, sweetie, we know you're in grave danger. Nathaniel, bless his persistent spirit, has been relentlessly fighting to secure an emergency hearing, pushing against the formidable legal bulwark Jeff has erected. Her eyes, wide and filled with a desperate plea, met mine. We just need a little more time, she implored, her voice barely a breath, as if time itself were a rapidly dwindling commodity. A primal fear surged through me, the sound of Jeff's heavy footsteps thudding with increasing proximity, a relentless rhythm closing in on my refuge. I don't have time, I retorted, my own voice a desperate, choked whisper mirroring the frantic pounding in my chest. The very air seemed to thicken with his approaching presence. Mrs. Grant, her eyes darting nervously towards the house, delivered her final, hurried instruction. He's coming tomorrow night, she articulated with a chilling certainty. Be ready. We're going to. Her sentence was abruptly severed, swallowed by the ominous creak of my bedroom door swinging inward. There stood Jeff, a formidable, towering figure framed in the doorway, his silhouette casting a long, menacing shadow. His face, contorted and devoid of any warmth, was a mask of cold, smoldering anger, his eyes glinting with an unmistakable fury that promised swift retribution. With a flash of instinctual survival, Mrs. Grant immediately ducked below the window's ledge, melting into the shadows. But it was too late. Even in that fleeting moment, the telltale beam of her flashlight had caught Jeff's hawkish eye, a silent accusation. Who are you talking to? He thundered, his voice raw with suspicion and menace, echoing off the walls. No one. I was just. My stammered reply was weak, dissolving into an incoherent mumble, a pathetic defense against his overwhelming presence. He crossed the room with an alarming swiftness, a predator closing in on its prey, covering the distance in just 2 powerful strides. Without a moment's hesitation, he roughly shoved me aside, his powerful hand sending me stumbling, to peer aggressively out the window. Mrs. Grant had vanished, swallowed by the night, but Jeff's gaze was razor sharp. He noticed it instantly, the telltale pattern of flattened, disturbed grass where she had so recently stood, an undeniable imprint confirming her presence. That meddling old hag, he snarled, his voice a low, guttural growl dripping with contempt and venom. She's working with Thomas, isn't she? Conspiring against me, just like he always does. Before I could even formulate a coherent thought, his fingers clamped around my arm, his grip a vice of steel, squeezing with such brutal force that I instinctively winced, already anticipating the dark purple bruise that would blossom there. What did she tell you? He demanded, his face inches from mine, his eyes burning with an unholy intensity. What are they plotting? What elaborate scheme are they concocting behind my back? Nothing, I insisted, my voice barely a whisper, a desperate attempt to deflect his wrath. He seized my shoulders, shaking me violently until my teeth rattled, the world blurring around me. Don't you dare lie to me, he roared, his patience clearly snapping. I know they're hatching something, some foolish plan, but it will never work. I am far too clever, too ingenious for their pathetic attempts at rebellion. With a final, furious glare, he spun on his heel and stormed out of the room, slamming the door shut with a force that rattled the entire house. Moments later, I heard the hushed, urgent tones of his voice on the phone, unmistakably Mom's number. And then, unsettlingly, within mere minutes, both of them were downstairs, their voices low and conspiratorial, engaged in a chilling session of strategic plotting in the living room. Driven by a desperate, gnawing fear, I pressed my ear flat against the cold, unyielding surface of the door, straining to catch every fragment of their sinister conversation. Their hushed voices, like venomous whispers, seeped through the thin wood, painting a horrifying picture. We need to discredit her, too. Jeff's voice, devoid of conscience, floated up from downstairs. Make it look like she's inextricably woven into Thomas's fabric of delusions. I'll make the call to the police first thing tomorrow morning. Mom's response was chillingly cooperative, a stark confirmation of her complicity. Yes, tell them she's been incessantly harassing us, actively aiding Thomas in his obsession to stalk our daughter. Then, a brief, pregnant pause, followed by a sickeningly audible shift in Jeff's tone, a cruel, self-satisfied smirk evident in his voice. No, wait, even better idea. Why just harassment? We'll make it appear as though she's been collaborating with Thomas on something far more nefarious, something truly unspeakable. We'll plant some carefully chosen evidence, let the police connect the dots themselves, leading them to their own damning conclusions. The blood in my veins turned to ice, each beat of my heart a painful, frigid throb. The realization hit me with the force of a physical blow. They were meticulously constructing an elaborate frame-up for Mrs. Grant, just as they had so masterfully turned everyone, even the legal system, against Thomas. A terrifying clarity descended upon me. They were orchestrating a meticulously cruel frame-up for Mrs. Grant, just as they had so cunningly manipulated perceptions and twisted truths to turn everyone friends, family, even the authorities irrevocably against Thomas. The injustice was staggering, the malevolence breathtaking. I had to warn her, that much was undeniable. But how the stark reality of my predicament crashed down on me with the weight of a lead blanket? I was effectively a prisoner, locked within these four walls, stripped of every means of communication. No phone, no computer, no lifeline to the outside world. The window, that fleeting portal to freedom I had briefly exploited, seemed my only viable option, a desperate gamble. But a chilling thought immediately extinguished that fragile spark of hope. Jeff, ever vigilant, ever suspicious, would undoubtedly be watching now, his gaze like a hawk. I waited, agonizing minutes stretching into an eternity, until the house was cloaked in a fragile, deceptive silence, a quiet born not of peace, but of lurking menace. Cautiously, I crept back to the window, my fingers trembling as I tested the lock once more. It was secured, tightly, irrevocably. A fresh wave of despair washed over me. He must have done it. I realized with a sickening certainty. He must have locked it from the outside, probably while I was in the bathroom. A calculated move to ensure my total isolation. The trap had sprung shut. I was utterly, completely, terrifyingly trapped. A caged bird with clipped wings. The following day at school felt like navigating a minefield. Every interaction fraught with peril and disappointment. I desperately sought an ally, anyone whose ears weren't deafened by Jeff's insidious narratives, anyone who would genuinely listen to my pleas. But his venomous poison had permeated every corner, every relationship. My teachers, rather than offering a sympathetic ear, would simply steer me towards the school counselor with polite but firm redirects, their faces etched with a practiced concern that felt utterly disingenuous. The counselor, in turn, would calmly dissect my fixation on these elaborate stories, pathologizing my truth as a psychological issue, an imaginative child's overactive mind. Even my closest friends, once my confidants, now subtly avoided me in the hallways. Their parents having clearly been warned about my malicious lies, their youthful eyes clouded with suspicion and a manufactured distance. During lunch, a sudden surge of adrenaline shot through me. A sleek police cruiser, its chrome glinting under the midday sun, was conspicuously parked in the school lot. My heart, a fragile bird, momentarily took flight. Could it be? Are they finally here to investigate Jeff, to unravel his web of deceit? But that fleeting hope was brutally crushed moments later. I watched, my stomach churning, as Jeff emerged from the principal's office, not in handcuffs, but with an air of dignified composure. He was flanked by two police officers, their expressions warm and reassuring, their handshakes firm and almost deferential. They looked utterly convinced, their faces radiating a blend of concerned professionalism and fatherly understanding, hanging on his every word. He met my gaze across the bustling courtyard, a slow, triumphant smile spreading across his lips, and then, with a chilling nonchalance, he gave me a deliberate, mocking wink, a silent, chilling declaration of his absolute victory. Later that afternoon, the ominous summons came. The principal wishes to see you. My stomach clenched, a cold premonition settling deep within me. Entering the principal's office, the atmosphere was suffocating, thick with an unspoken judgment. The same two officers from earlier were there, their presence now imbued with a chilling authority, alongside the principal, whose face was a mask of grave disapproval, the counselor, her gaze unfortunately empathetic, and Mom, her face a picture of saccharine concern. Honey, Mom began, her voice dripping with an artificial sweetness, a cloying tone that set my teeth on edge. These kind officers just need to ask you a few questions about Mrs. Grant, the female officer, her demeanor meticulously professional yet subtly intimidating, leaned forward, her eyes fixated on me. We've received some rather concerning information regarding Mrs. Grant's relationship with Mr. Thomas, she stated, her words carefully chosen, and we understand she has recently been attempting to establish contact with you. A visceral wave of dread washed over me. I recognized it instantly for what it was, a perfectly laid trap, meticulously constructed to ensnare me. Yet, despite this chilling clarity, my mind raced frantically, utterly unable to discern an escape route. She's just worried about me, I managed to stammer out, a desperate, almost pathetic attempt to shield Mrs. Grant from their manufactured accusations. The male officer, his face devoid of emotion, seized on my words, twisting them into something sinister. Worried, dear, or perhaps actively involved in something highly inappropriate. He countered, his voice a smooth, unsettling calm. Then came the gut-wrenching blow, delivered with casual cruelty. Your stepfather recently discovered some profoundly disturbing photographs on Thomas's computer. Photos involving children, including, we are informed, images of you. The breath caught in my throat, a wave of nausea sweeping over me. That's not true. I protested vehemently, my voice rising in a desperate crescendo. Jeff is lying. He's fabricating this entire grotesque story. Because what, exactly? Jeff interjected, his voice unnervingly gentle, almost solicitous, yet his eyes, those hard, predatory eyes, glinted with an unmistakable tremor. Because I care about your safety, darling. Because I'm trying, with every fiber of my being, to protect you from those who would prey on your innocence. At that moment, something inside me snapped, a lifetime of suppressed fear and anger erupting in a raw and bridled torrent. You're the predator, I screamed, vaulting to my feet, my chair scraping loudly behind me. My voice was hoarse, ragged, thick with cares and fury. You're the one who hurts me. You're the one who my accusation was abruptly cut short as Mom, with surprising strength, grabbed my arm, her grip unforgiving, and yanked me back down into the seat. Her face a mask of manufactured distress, see? She exclaimed, turning to the officers with a theatrical sigh. This is precisely what Thomas has done to her. He's poisoned her mind, filled her head with these absolutely terrible, delusional ideas, twisting her perception of reality. And now, distressingly, Mrs. Grant is involved too, actively assisting him in his cruel attempts to manipulate our vulnerable daughter. The two officers exchanged solemn, knowing glances, their expressions confirming my worst fears. It was painfully clear. They believed every single, carefully crafted lie, every insidious word. Based on this concerning information, the female officer stated, her tone now unequivocally formal, we will indeed need to bring Mrs. Grant in for questioning. Then, her gaze hardening slightly, she turned back to me. And, young lady, for your own protection, for your own safety, we are going to need you to stay completely away from her. Her words were a final, suffocating nail in my coffin of isolation. I felt the invisible walls of my world inexorably closing in, their cold, unyielding surfaces pressing in from all sides. It was terrifyingly clear Jeff had, with calculated precision and chilling effectiveness, systematically dismantled and eliminated every single person who had offered me even a flicker of hope or a chance at salvation. Thomas, my last true protector, was thoroughly neutralized, rendered powerless by the impenetrable barrier of that restraining order. His daughters, the very reason he fought, were now cruelly forced back into the destructive orbit of their abusive mother, another casualty of Jeff's machinations, Mrs. Grant, the brave neighbor who had risked so much, would soon be caught in the merciless gears of a police investigation, her reputation and freedom in jeopardy. Nathaniel, my brother, was valiantly battling the monolithic system, but that system, I now understood with a crushing certainty, was not merely flawed, it was meticulously rigged. Every cog and lever meticulously manipulated, irrevocably in Jeff's favor. That night, a chilling, triumphant smile plastered across his face, Jeff entered my room as if he owned it, which, in his twisted reality, he did. He sauntered over and sat heavily on the edge of my bed, his proximity a profound violation. You see how this all works, don't you, little bird? He purred, his voice a low, malevolent rumble. I own this town. Every crooked cop, every bureaucrat, they're all in my pocket. I own the police force, their badges, their authority. I own your school, its principal, its counselors, its entire system of supposed protection. And most importantly, darling, I own you. As his hand reached out, a predatory gesture, I recoiled instantly, scrambling backwards across the bed until my back hit the cold wall. But there was no escape, nowhere left to flee. Thomas, with his pathetic restraining order, can't save you, he continued, his voice dripping with condescension. That meddling old lady, Mrs. Grant, she certainly can't save you now. No one, absolutely no one, can save you from me. So, what's the point? You might as well just stop fighting. In a desperate, futile burst of defiance, I lashed out with my foot, kicking wildly, screaming at the top of my lungs a raw, primal cry for help. Mom, I shrieked, my voice cracking, hoping against hope that she would finally hear, that something in her would stir, that she would intervene. But the house remained eerily silent. She never came. Eventually, seemingly bored with my resistance, Jeff rose and left, the click of the door closing behind him echoing the finality of my despair. I lay crumpled on the floor, shuddering, utterly alone, my body racked with guttural sobs. Broken and defeated, I crawled across the floor, my movements sluggish and heavy, until I reached the window, my sanctuary, my only portal to the outside world. I pressed my face against the cold glass, desperate for a breath of fresh air, for even a hint of escape, for anything that might break the suffocating hold of my despair. That's when my eyes, blurry with tears, caught a tiny anomaly, a small, folded piece of paper, almost imperceptible, meticulously tucked into the narrow crevice of the window frame. Clearly placed there from the outside, a flicker of hope, fragile yet fiercely defiant, ignited within me. With painstaking care, my fingernail aching from the effort, I managed to pry the note free, my heart thrumming a frantic beat against my ribs. It was from Thomas. His handwriting, usually bold and flowing, was now cramped and urgent, a frantic scrawl that mirrored the chaos of our situation. The message was stark, precise, and utterly devoid of pleasantries. Tomorrow, 3 p.m. be ready. A shiver ran down my spine. A strange mixture of terror and exhilarating anticipation. I had no idea what audacious, desperate plan he was concocting, but in that moment of absolute desolation, it shone like a single, solitary star in an otherwise impenetrable darkness. It was my only hope, my final gamble. With trembling hands, I secreted the note beneath my mattress, a tiny flame of rebellion hidden from prying eyes, and attempted to lie down. The relentless tick-tock of the clock morphing into an agonizing countdown towards an unknown future. The hours until 3 p.m. the next day stretched into an agonizing eternity, each tick of the clock amplifying the tension within our house. Jeff, his eyes like two unblinking sentinels, watched my every move with an intensity I'd never seen. As if he possessed an unsettling sixth sense that something monumental was about to shatter his carefully constructed peace. He'd even taken the entire day off work, a blatant, thinly veiled excuse to maintain his relentless, suffocating surveillance, claiming he just needed to keep an eye on things. Then, at precisely 2:45 p.m., a distant will pierced the stifling quiet, the unmistakable, urgent cry of sirens. Jeff, his brow furrowed in a deep frown, moved with an uncharacteristic swiftness to the living room window. The wails intensified, swelling from a distant hum to a resonant shriek, and through the glass, I could discern a faint, dark plume of smoke coiling lazily upwards. Just beyond the rooftops of our usually tranquil neighborhood, a knot tightened in my stomach. Was this it? Fire at the Johnsons, Mom announced, her voice a strained whisper as she peered through the kitchen window, her face pale. Looks bad, honey. Really bad, her words were punctuated by Jeff's sharp curse, a guttural sound of frustration and perhaps dawning realization. The Johnsons were only 3 houses down. Their proximity meant this wasn't just a distant spectacle, but an encroaching threat, a harbinger of forced disruption. Their home, a mere 3 houses away, meant we were undeniably within the immediate danger zone, a fact that surely wouldn't escape the fire department's pragmatic assessment. And indeed, as if on cue, just a few anxious minutes later, a forceful rap echoed through the house, the arrival of a uniformed firefighter. His presence a clear signal that the carefully orchestrated plan was now unfolding. "Ma'am," the firefighter stated, his voice firm but respectful, the smoke-tinged air swirling around him. "We need everyone to evacuate immediately, as a precautionary measure, while we work to get this situation under control." "Of course, officer," Mom replied with an almost theatrical eagerness, already snatching her purse from the hook by the door. "Honey, get your shoes on, quickly now." Her false compliance, though necessary, felt like a knife twisting in my gut. Jeff's eyes narrowed, a flicker of raw suspicion igniting in their depths. But even his formidable control couldn't override the undeniable authority of the fire department. Trapped between his escalating paranoia and the very real necessity of public safety, he was, for once, utterly speechless, his usual bluster silenced by the uniform and the emergency. As we finally emerged from the house, joining the flowing stream of evacuees, the street was a tableau of organized chaos. Neighbors, usually cloistered behind their fences, now gathered in hushed, anxious clusters, their faces illuminated by the flickering orange glow in the distance. My gaze, however, cut through the milling crowd, drawn by an invisible thread, and there he was, Thomas. He stood precisely at the invisible line, the very edge of the restraining order boundary, his posture alert, his eyes, dark and intense, locking onto mine across the surging sea of humanity. A silent conversation passed between us, a shared understanding of the desperate gambit we were playing. The scene was a maelstrom of activity. Firefighters barked orders, their neon vests flashing amidst the thick haze. Hoses snaked across lawns, anxious neighbors exchanged worried glances. In this whirlwind of urgent motion and sensory overload, Jeff's formidable attention, usually hyper-focused on me, was finally fractured. He was performing a delicate, almost theatrical, balancing act attempting to keep his predatory gaze fixed on me, his errant daughter, while simultaneously maintaining the veneer of a concerned citizen, gesturing vaguely and offering platitudes to bewildered bystanders. It was a perfect storm of distraction. With a carefully calibrated nonchalance, I began to subtly drift away from my parents, a nearly imperceptible sidle toward a cluster of neighborhood kids, whose innocent chatter provided perfect camouflage. Jeff's eyes, however, were still honed in, and he immediately caught my subtle shift, his expression hardening as he started to move in my direction. But fate, it seemed, was on my side. Just as he took his first step, a burly firefighter, a lifeline in uniform, intercepted him, his urgent voice inquiring about the gas lines in our house. This was it. My heart hammered my chance. Now or never. The instant the firefighter diverted Jeff's attention, I didn't hesitate. I broke into a desperate, headlong sprint, my body a darting shadow weaving through the bewildered crowd of neighbors, each face a blur. Behind me, I heard Jeff's enraged bellow, a primal roar of fury followed by Mom's shrill, panicked cry of my name. But their words, once potent shackles, now dissolved into the cacophony of the evacuation. I didn't stop. I couldn't. Across the chaotic tableau, Thomas, ever vigilant, saw my desperate dash. He began to move in a parallel trajectory, a silent, coordinated dance, carefully maintaining his position just outside the invisible, legally enforced perimeter of the restraining order. His destination was clear, his car parked strategically for this very moment, a beacon of escape on the horizon. Jeff, his rage fueling his pursuit, was no longer weaving. He was crashing through the crowd, a destructive force scattering startled neighbors in his wake. His voice, hoarse with desperation and malice, cut through the air. "Stop her. She's confused. She's not safe. Someone, for God's sake, stop that child." His familiar, insidious lies, designed to paint me as unstable and him as the benevolent protector, were now echoing publicly, a last-ditch effort to control the narrative. Yet, in the overwhelming chaos of a genuine fire evacuation, where collective survival overshadowed individual dramas, his frantic shouts fell on deaf ears. No one, not a single harried firefighter or concerned neighbor, paused to heed the pleas about one seemingly confused running child. The larger emergency consumed all attention, rendering Jeff's manipulative performance utterly impotent. My gasping lungs burned, and my legs ached, but I pushed harder, finally reaching the crucial boundary line just as Thomas, with impeccable timing, reached the open door of his car. He stood there, a picture of agonized restraint, his hand hovering, his eyes pleading. He couldn't cross. To take even one step over that invisible line would be to violate the restraining order, to hand Jeff the very weapon he craved irrefutable proof for Thomas's immediate arrest, thereby shattering our entire meticulously planned escape. "Run to Mrs. Grant's house," Thomas roared, his voice cutting through the remaining distance, a lifeline thrown. "Nathaniel's there. He has the papers." Go now, without a second's hesitation. I veered sharply left, my body responding instinctively, now sprinting with every ounce of dwindling strength toward Mrs. Grant's house, a sanctuary 2 streets away. Behind me, the desperate cries for help had ceased. Jeff, abandoning all pretense, was now giving chase himself, a relentless predator on my heels. His longer strides meant he was gaining, the gap between us shrinking with every agonizing footfall, his heavy breathing a terrifying soundtrack to my flight. My lungs felt like they were on fire, searing with every ragged breath, and my legs, weakened and unsteady from weeks of forced captivity in my room, threatened to buckle beneath me. I could distinctly hear Jeff's pounding footsteps growing ominously closer, punctuated by his ragged, guttural breaths, each exhalation thick with a palpable, terrifying rage. Finally, like an oasis in a desert, Mrs. Grant's house materialized into view, a beacon of hope. Crucially, its front door stood invitingly open, a silent promise of refuge. On the porch, serene amidst the distant sirens and encroaching danger, stood Nathaniel, his face etched with concern, alongside another woman tall, authoritative. Impeccably dressed in a sharp business suit, the cavalry had arrived. Hurry, Nathaniel urged, his voice ringing with a desperate urgency that spurred my last reserves of energy. I pushed myself harder, a final, agonizing surge, but it was too late. Jeff's hand, a cold, vice-like claw, brushed violently against my back, then closed over the fabric of my shirt, wrenching me backward with brutal force. I twisted violently, a desperate, instinctual surge of defiance, stumbling awkwardly but miraculously managing to stay on my feet for a precious few more yards. Got you, Jeff snarled, a triumphant, sickening declaration of victory. His hand, relentless and unforgiving, clamped down on my arm, his fingers digging into my flesh, yanking me backward with punishing force, my feet scraping against the asphalt. But in that pivotal instant, we had crossed the threshold. We were now squarely within Mrs. Grant's front yard, and the woman in the impeccable suit, her posture radiating an undeniable authority, stepped forward, her gaze unwavering, her voice calm but resonant. Let her go, Mr. Morrison, she commanded, the words ringing with finality. I am Judge Patricia Hawkins from the family court. I have just signed an emergency protection order for this child. Jeff's iron grip, which seconds before had been so terrifyingly absolute, suddenly loosened in sheer, incredulous shock, his fingers going slack. What? He stammered, his face draining of color, his voice a strangled croak of disbelief. You absolutely cannot do this. I can and I have, Mr. Morrison, Judge Hawkins stated, her voice utterly unruffled, each word a hammer blow against his crumbling reality, based on the irrefutable evidence Mr. Nathaniel has meticulously presented, including extensive medical records detailing documented injuries, damning photographic evidence, and compelling sworn statements from multiple credible witnesses. I am hereby placing this child immediately into emergency protective custody. This is kidnapping, Jeff sputtered, his face now a mask of frantic, impotent rage, his voice rising to a desperate shriek. I'll have your job for this. You don't know who I am, you'll do nothing, Jeff. Thomas's voice cut through the tense air, calm and resolute, as he appeared at the very edge of the yard, a silent guardian, still meticulously positioned just beyond the restraining order's invisible perimeter. Absolutely nothing, except finally face the full and varnished consequences of every reprehensible thing you've done. As if on cue, another chorus of sirens swelled in the distance, but these were distinct, sharper, lacking the familiar urgency of fire trucks. Moments later, two sleek, official-looking police cruisers glided to a halt in front of Mrs. Grant's house, and out stepped officers I didn't recognize, their uniforms subtly different, their badges confirming they were state police. Not the local force Jeff likely believed he had under his sway. The game was truly over. Jeffrey Morrison, one of the state troopers, announced, his voice devoid of emotion, a cold pronouncement of justice. We have a warrant for your immediate arrest on multiple grave charges, felony child abuse, sexual assault of a minor, and witness intimidation. Each word was a cold, precise strike. An indictment of the monstrous truth Jeff had so desperately tried to conceal. Jeff's face, already pale from shock, now drained entirely of color, becoming ashen and lifeless. His eyes, wide with raw terror, darted wildly around, a trapped animal seeking escape. He saw Mom, now running frantically up the street, her face a mask of dawning horror. He saw the cluster of neighbors, their whispers growing louder, their gazes shifting from curiosity to open condemnation. He saw it all. His meticulously constructed world, built on deceit and manipulation, crumbling irrevocably into dust around him. This is a mistake, he stammered, his voice utterly devoid of its usual arrogant, confident edge. Now a pathetic, reedy whisper, I'm a pillar of this community. I coach the kids' softball team. I run a reputable charity. You're a predator, Jeff, Mrs. Grant interrupted quietly, her voice laced with a steely conviction that silenced him instantly. And we have the irrefutable proof. As the officers, grim-faced and methodical, advanced toward him, the glint of handcuffs catching the afternoon sun, Jeff made one final, desperate, flailing play for control. She's lying, he shrieked, pointing at me, then sweeping his hand to encompass Nathaniel, Thomas, and Judge Hawkins. They all are. That Thomas manipulated them. Check his computer. You'll find things there, I guarantee it. Oh, we did check his computer, Mr. Morrison, one of the state troopers stated, his voice a flat, matter-of-fact pronouncement that left no room for doubt. In fact, we found the evidence you planted there yesterday. We also, quite conveniently, found your fingerprints prominently displayed on the USB drive you used to transfer it. Your fatal mistake, you see, was purchasing that very specific drive with your own credit card. The air left Jeff's lungs in a silent push. Jeff's mouth gaped open and closed uselessly, like a fish gasping for air, no words capable of escaping the trap of his own making. Behind him, in the middle of the now quieter street, Mom had frozen, her body rigid, her face an unreadable mask of absolute, profound shock. the carefully constructed illusion of her life shattering around her. "Mom," I called out, my voice raw, a last, desperate plea for a connection, some lingering, irrational part of me still clutching at the slender hope that even now, she might finally choose me. She looked at me, her eyes flitting over my face, then to Jeff, now being efficiently handcuffed, then to the silent, watching neighbors, their gazes filled with judgment. In that agonizing silence, I saw the exact moment the choice was made, the scales tipped irrevocably. "This is all a misunderstanding," she blurted out, her voice shrill and defensive, rushing to Jeff's side, placing herself protectively beside him. "My daughter is troubled, you see. She makes things up." "Jeff would never, ma'am," Judge Hawkins calmly but firmly interrupted, her voice cutting through Mom's frantic denial like a surgeon's scalpel. "Your daughter has extensive, thoroughly documented injuries, all tragically consistent with sustained abuse. Furthermore, multiple independent witnesses have courageously come forward. And your husband, Mrs. Morrison, has just been caught red-handed planting fabricated evidence in a desperate attempt to frame an innocent man. No, ma'am, this is not a misunderstanding. This is a comprehensive unraveling of a monstrous truth." Mom's face crumbled then, but not with the dawning realization of her husband's depravity, nor with a flicker of remorse for her own complicity. No, her features contorted with a venomous anger, directed solely at me. "You've ruined everything," she hissed, her words laced with icy fury, her eyes spitting accusation. "Our life, our reputation, everything we built, destroyed because of you." "No, Mrs. Morrison," Thomas interjected firmly, his voice ringing with undeniable truth. "Jeff ruined everything. And you, through your willful blindness and complicity, enabled him every step of the way. Your daughter survived, not because of you, but despite both of you. The state police, efficient and unyielding, led Jeff away, his arms secured behind his back, his desperate protests and thinly veiled threats continuing to pour forth. He tried, even then, to play the victim, to invoke the specter of his fabricated good deeds, but no one was listening anymore. The powerful, insidious spell he had cast over the community, the illusion of his benevolence, was irrevocably broken. Neighbors who had once shunned Thomas, casting him as the villain, now shifted uncomfortably, their faces etched with palpable shame. Parents who had so readily believed Jeff's polished lies exchanged hushed, guilt-ridden whispers among themselves, their worldviews irrevocably fractured by the chilling, undeniable truth. The suffocating weight of secrets, meticulously crafted and cruelly maintained, had finally crumbled. The truth, like a long-dormant volcano, erupted into the stark, unforgiving light. "What happens now?" My voice, thin and reedy from the emotional torrent, barely formed the question as I looked at Nathaniel. "Now you're safe," she said, her presence a steady anchor in the swirling chaos, gently drawing me into the embrace of her arm, a silent promise of protection. "You'll stay with a foster family," a term that felt alien and simultaneously reassuring, a temporary harbor while the labyrinthine legal machinery grinds slowly forward. Thomas, a man whose quiet desperation had been almost palpable, was battling fiercely to reclaim his daughters, to innocent lives caught in a web of deceit. My contribution, the fragments of truth I had meticulously pieced together concerning their mother, would serve as a crucial lever in his fight. And then, the chilling reality, I would have to stand, vulnerable yet resolute, and testify against Jeff, confronting the architect of my torment. My head felt heavy, a pendulum swinging between the bone-deep weariness that threatened to overwhelm me and the fragile, intoxicating sensation of relief that began to unfurl within my chest like a tentative bloom. This was not a clean slate, not a sudden, definitive end. Ahead lay a gauntlet of trials, the grueling burden of repeated testimony, and countless difficult days, echoes of the storm yet to come. But for the first time in what felt like an eternity, the crushing weight on my lungs had lifted, allowing me to take a deep, unfettered breath, a fragile promise of life rediscovered. The buzzing crowd, a mixture of concerned neighbors and curious onlookers, gradually thinned, their hushed murmurs trailing off like dissipating smoke. Through the clearing space, Thomas, his shoulders still taut with residual tension, slowly advanced toward the invisible boundary that separated us. We stood separated by mere feet, an emotional chasm stretching between us, too vast for a simple embrace, too raw for conventional expressions of thanks. Our unspoken gratitude hung heavy in the air, a silent testament to shared burdens and unexpected alliances. My voice, still wavering, uttered the stark truth. "You saved me." His response was immediate, humble, yet profound. "You saved yourself," he countered, his gaze unwavering. "I was merely a catalyst, a helper in your incredible act of self-preservation. And in turn, you became the unexpected beacon that illuminated the path to saving my girls," he added, a flicker of hope in his weary eyes. "The judge will be reviewing their case tomorrow. A direct consequence of every shocking revelation that has finally come to light." Then, Mrs. Grant, her face streaked with tears of genuine remorse, stepped tentatively closer, her voice thick with regret. "I'm so profoundly sorry," she began, "that it took us, your neighbors, so agonizingly long to truly see the truth, to comprehend the depth of your suffering, and to finally act." I met her gaze, a gentle understanding softening my own. "You acted when it genuinely mattered, Mrs. Grant," I assured her. "That, above all else, is what truly counts." Amidst the gravity of our conversation, a lighter note, tinged with a knowing irony, emerged. The commotion from the Johnsons' house had subsided. The small kitchen fire, despite generating a dramatic plume of smoke that had momentarily darkened the sky, had caused remarkably little structural damage, quickly brought under control. Thomas offered a faint, almost imperceptible smile. Convenient timing, wouldn't you say? I remarked, a mischievous glint in my eye. Remarkably so, he conceded, his smile broadening ever so slightly. Almost as if, I continued, savoring the unspoken implication. Someone with a discerning eye for electrical systems might have subtly suggested to old Mr. Johnson that his ancient wiring was due for an inspection, and that, perhaps, a few well-timed sparks could coincidentally decide to fly. Mrs. Grant, though feigning a stern frown, couldn't quite hide the knowing smile playing on her lips. Thomas, she playfully chided, but her eyes, too, sparkled with an unspoken appreciation for the poetic justice. As Nathaniel gently guided me towards her waiting car, my gaze involuntarily drifted back to the neighborhood, a cluster of houses that had, for far too long, served as my insidious, invisible prison. Jeff's house, once a fortress of deceit, now stood eerily silent and empty, a hollow shell. Mom, unable to confront the scathing glare of her neighbor's collective judgment, had reportedly fled to the supposed sanctuary of her sisters, abandoning her own child to the wreckage she had helped create. But across the street, on Thomas's house, a more hopeful transformation had occurred. The venomous word predator, scrawled in an act of community condemnation, had been defiantly crossed out, replaced by a single, powerful word, hero. It was a stark, public reclamation of his shattered reputation, a testament to the community's shifting perception. This was far from a storybook ending, devoid of neat bows and instant resolutions. I was embarking on an uncertain journey to a foster home, my future a hazy, unwritten chapter. Thomas, too, faced an arduous ascent, still battling fiercely for the custody of his beloved daughters. The legal gauntlet that stretched before us both promised to be protracted and emotionally grueling, a test of endurance. Yet, in the midst of this lingering uncertainty, one truth shone with blinding clarity. I was undeniably free. Jeff, the architect of my nightmares, was safely behind bars. The suffocating shroud of secrecy had been torn away, and the truth, raw and unvarnished, now stood exposed. And sometimes, just sometimes, the simple act of shedding light on darkness is enough to plant the first fragile seeds of healing, enough to begin the long, arduous journey back to oneself. From the quiet sanctuary of Nathaniel's car, I watched, almost mesmerized, as the neighborhood continued to transform into an active crime scene, punctuated by the flashing strobes of ever more arriving police vehicles, a stark visual manifestation of justice finally stirring. Uniformed state troopers, grim-faced and efficient, were methodically establishing a wider perimeter around Jeff's house, securing the scene like a precious, toxic artifact. Behind them, crime scene technicians, clad in sterile suits, began their somber procession, carting in an array of specialized equipment, silent harbingers of the meticulous investigation to come. Amidst this orchestrated chaos, my eyes, almost magnetically, found Mom. She stood near her car, a figure of frantic defiance, embroiled in a heated argument with an impassive officer, her hand slicing through the air in wild, desperate gesticulations. A woman cornered and exposed, Nathaniel, her voice a low, steady hum, broke the spell. "We need to go to the station now," she stated, the engine purring to life beneath us. "They'll want to record your statement to capture every detail while it's still searingly fresh in your mind, before the passage of time can blur the edges of truth." As Nathaniel smoothly navigated the car out of the neighborhood, we drove past Thomas's house once more. There he stood, not alone, but in his driveway alongside an official-looking woman, Judge Hawkins, I recognized with a jolt of clarity. He was presenting her with a thick stack of documents, his daughter's long-awaited case file. I suddenly understood. The judge, her expression a careful blend of professionalism and concern, nodded thoughtfully as she perused the pages, occasionally pausing to interject with a quiet, probing question. A sign that the wheels of justice were indeed turning for his family too. Upon arriving at the state police station, an immediate, palpable difference struck me, a stark contrast to my previous, terrifyingly dismissed attempt to report Jeff. This time, the atmosphere was one of quiet competence, a genuine engagement, rather than hurried indifference. A female detective, her eyes radiating an unexpected warmth and empathy that immediately put me at ease, gently guided me to a comfortable room. It was furnished not with the cold, sterile metal chairs I'd anticipated, but with soft couches, offering an unexpected haven. She introduced herself as Detective Martinez, her voice calm and reassuring, explaining that she specialized in cases precisely like mine. A revelation that brought a strange sense of validation. "Take all the time you need," she instructed, her voice a bomb, as she meticulously positioned a small recorder. "We have all day, if that's what it takes to tell your story," and tell it I did. For 3 arduous, cathartic hours, I spoke, unspooling every excruciating detail, every terrifying incident, every single moment Jeff had inflicted pain upon me, laying bare the deeply buried landscape of my suffering. Throughout my raw, unfiltered confession, Detective Martinez remained a steadfast presence. She never once interrupted the halting flow of my words, nor did her expression betray even a hint of skepticism. Instead, she quietly filled notebooks with her meticulous notes, interjecting only with soft, clarifying questions, her tone always respectful, always encouraging me to continue. When the last, trembling word had finally left my lips, and a profound silence settled between us, I looked up to see a sheen of tears glistening in her kind eyes. "You are incredibly brave," she affirmed, her voice thick with emotion, but firm with conviction. "Your courageous testimony, woven together with the undeniable physical evidence Thomas so painstakingly collected, and further bolstered by the crucial medical documentation, presents us with an exceptionally strong case." A case, I believe, that will ensure justice is served. Even as I recounted the slow, agonizing moments of my past in the quiet, comforting room, the world outside was hurtling forward with a relentless pace. Back in the neighborhood, the gears of justice were grinding swiftly and decisively. Nathaniel, ever the vigilant protector, kept receiving a steady stream of updates on her phone, each notification a new piece of the rapidly unfolding puzzle. Jeff's computer, a digital vault of his twisted secrets, had been successfully seized. And then, the most chilling revelation. They had unearthed the security camera footage from my own bedroom. Hours upon excruciating hours of it. A silent, damning chronicle of his abuses. Now undeniable proof. Furthermore, the very USB drive he had so cunningly used to fabricate evidence and frame Thomas was now, ironically, his undoing. It contained forensic traces of other, far more sinister files, undeniably bad files. As Nathaniel succinctly put it, her voice, hushed and heavy with grim satisfaction, delivered the final, definitive pronouncement. He's going away for a very, very long time. There's no escaping this now. As evening descended, I found myself transitioning into a new, unfamiliar chapter. Initially placed with an emergency foster family, I was soon transferred to the more permanent care of the Guans, an older couple whose home lay across town. A world away from the shadows I had left behind. They were a warm, seasoned couple, their lives rich with 2 decades of experience fostering children, offering solace and stability to countless young lives. Mrs. Guan, her movements gentle and comforting, prepared a nourishing bowl of soup, its warmth spreading through me like a healing balm. Meanwhile, Mr. Guan, with quiet efficiency, set about arranging a bedroom specifically for me, creating a space that promised safety and privacy. His voice, soft and reassuring, carried a profound, symbolic message as he indicated my room. No locks on the doors here, he said. You are free to come and go as you please. This simple statement, a stark contrast to the locked physical and emotional doors of my past, resonated deeply. That first night, my sleep was a fractured tapestry of unease, every creak and rustle sending a jolt of primal fear through me. Yet, with each passing hour, the silent reality took root. No one came to my door. No one tried to hurt me. The quiet, consistent truth of safety began its slow, painstaking work of mending my shattered sense of security. The next morning, vibrant with a renewed sense of purpose, brought with it a flurry of activity. Nathaniel arrived early, her presence a steady anchor, to take me to an important meeting with the prosecutor, the next crucial step in this complex legal journey. The prosecutor, a formidable and incisive woman named Patricia Chen, possessed an air of focused determination. She meticulously guided me through the intricate roadmap of what lay ahead, preparing me for the arduous path still to be traversed. Her words were crisp, delivering news that brought a surge of vindication. Jeff has been unequivocally denied bail, she explained, her voice firm. The court views him as an undeniable flight risk and, more critically, an active danger to the community. She acknowledged that the trial itself was still several months distant. A slow march towards justice, but reiterated with confidence, we possess an exceptionally strong case, built on unassailable evidence, a question heavy with lingering pain and confusion. Escaped my lips. What about Mom? Patricia's typically composed expression visibly hardened, a subtle but telling shift. Your mother, she stated, her tone now devoid of any warmth, is being formally charged as an accessory. The overwhelming body of evidence clearly demonstrates that she was not only fully aware of the egregious abuse you suffered, but, unforgivably, failed in her fundamental duty to protect you. She continued, offering a crucial layer of safety. While she is currently out on bail, a stringent no-contact order has been issued. She is legally prohibited from coming anywhere near you, a necessary barrier for your well-being. After the intense meeting, Nathaniel, understanding the unspoken longing in my heart, took a deliberate route that led us back through my old neighborhood. I felt an undeniable pull, a profound need to see Thomas again, to offer a proper, heartfelt thank you that words alone couldn't fully express. The burdensome restraining order, a painful reminder of past anxieties, had thankfully been lifted now that Jeff was finally in custody, removing another barrier between us. Thomas's house, once a stark symbol of ostracization, now radiated a quiet dignity. The hateful predator graffiti, a public mark of shame, had been completely eradicated, replaced by a fresh, clean coat of white paint, a literal whitewashing of past injustice. Even more remarkably, neighbors, the very same individuals who had so cruelly shunned him, were now actively in his yard, their faces etched with quiet industry. They were mending his slashed tires, repairing damaged property, a collective act of atonement and solidarity. And then I saw him standing proudly on his porch, flanked by his daughters. They were back. A wave of profound relief washed over me. Both girls, their faces already softer, their eyes brighter, looked noticeably healthier, their laughter echoing as they played with new toys, oblivious to the painful past. Thomas watched them, a protective sentinel, his face finally eased into a quiet, profound joy. Impulsively, I ran up the steps, my voice thick with emotion. You did it, Thomas, I whispered, tears blurring my vision. He pulled me into a fierce, unwavering hug, a profound connection forming between us. No, he corrected, his voice raspy with emotion. We did it. All of us, together, his daughters, Alexander and her sister, sensing the profound gravity of the moment, quickly joined our embrace, weaving themselves into the fabric of our shared relief. For a long, silent moment, we stood there, a tableau for survivors, for souls who had, against all odds, found each other and forged an unbreakable bond in the crushing darkness. Just then, Mrs. Grant, ever the matriarch of the neighborhood, emerged from next door, cradling a steaming casserole. "For your dinner, Thomas," she announced, her voice soft, then turned her kind gaze to me. "How are you holding up, dear? Better." I managed a genuine, heartfelt better than I had felt in what seemed like an eternity, knowing that this was just the beginning of truly living. I confessed honestly, my voice barely above a whisper, "The Annuans are truly wonderful people. Really good folk." A gentle smile touched her lips, and she gave a slow, reassuring nod. "Oh, I've known them for ages," she murmured, her gaze soft and trusting. "You'll be absolutely safe there, I promise you." It was astonishing how drastically the entire neighborhood had shifted its demeanor, almost overnight. Just 24 hours prior, a thick veil of suspicion and judgment had hung heavy in the air, but now, a fragile, almost palpable peace seemed to settle. The same parents who had once, without a second thought, physically yanked their unsuspecting children away from Thomas's innocent presence in the park, now sheepishly led those same children by the hand, their faces etched with palpable shame, to offer belated, awkward apologies. What a cruel twist of fate, wouldn't you agree? Even the woman who had, with such righteous indignation, publicly threatened to call Child Protective Services on him, now appeared at the doorstep. Clutching a plate of homemade cookies, a poignant offering of atonement, her eyes swollen and red-rimmed from a torrent of tears. Her voice was choked with genuine remorse as she stammered out her apology. "Oh, I should have seen through it all," she lamented, her voice cracking with regret, a heavy sigh escaping her lips. Jeff, he was just so incredibly convincing, a master manipulator of perception. Yet, now, in hindsight, the glaring signs were undeniably there, weren't they? Thomas, ever the picture of dignity and composure, accepted each hesitant apology with remarkable grace. But despite his outward calm, I couldn't help but notice the profound, almost imperceptible flicker of deep-seated hurt that momentarily shadowed his eyes. A poignant reminder of how these very same individuals had been so quick, so eager, to demolish his reputation and life based solely on Jeff's meticulously crafted web of deceit. Later that very afternoon, I found myself walking into what felt like a new chapter, attending my very first appointment with a trauma counselor. This wasn't some perfunctory meeting. This was a lifeline. Dr. Patel, thankfully, was a world away from the detached, almost dismissive school counselor who had so easily brushed aside my pleas for help, leaving me feeling utterly invalidated and unheard. Instead, Dr. Patel possessed an extraordinary capacity for empathy. She listened intently, without a shred of judgment clouding her gaze, her presence a comforting anchor. She didn't just hear my words, she truly saw me, offering not just a sympathetic ear, but tangible, practical tools and coping mechanisms designed to navigate the terrifying labyrinth of my recurring nightmares and the suffocating grip of constant anxiety that had become my unwelcome companions. "Healing, you must understand," she explained softly, her voice a bomb, "is rarely a straight line. It's often a winding path, fraught with unexpected detours and uphill climbs," she continued, her wisdom resonating deeply. "Some days will inevitably feel heavier, harder than others, and that, my dear, is not just okay, it's perfectly normal." The Annuans, my new guardians, were nothing short of incredibly patient, their understanding unwavering as I grappled with the raw, chaotic aftermath of my trauma during that harrowing first week, when the echoes of my past would often snatch me from sleep, leaving me waking up screaming, "Mrs. Innuan" would gently appear, her silhouette a beacon in the dark. She would silently brew a soothing cup of chamomile tea, her quiet presence beside me a profound comfort, remaining there, steadfast, until the terror subsided and my ragged breath finally evened out. And when the very sight or smell of certain foods became unbearable, triggering vivid, horrifying flashbacks of Jeff, Mr. Innuan, with an impressive dedication, took it upon himself to learn an entirely new repertoire of culinary skills, meticulously crafting new dishes that carried no such painful associations, ensuring I felt safe and nourished. Returning to school was, to put it mildly, an incredibly complicated ordeal, fraught with an uneasy tension. The news of Jeff's arrest had, predictably, torn through the school's social fabric like wildfire, leaving a trail of whispers and bewildered glances in its wake. Walking through the bustling hallways felt like navigating a gauntlet. Some kids openly stared, their gazes heavy with pity that felt almost suffocating, while others, equally unsettling, regarded me with an unvarnished curiosity, as if I were a fascinating, tragic exhibit. My teacher, her face etched with a profound sorrow, apologized profusely, her words tumbling out in a torrent of genuine regret for not having believed me earlier. As an educator, she confessed, her voice thick with emotion, tears welling in her eyes and tracing paths down her cheeks. "I am mandated, by law, to report any suspicions of abuse, and I failed you utterly. I am so terribly sorry." The raw honesty of her admission was both heartbreaking and a small measure of relief. Later, the principal organized a mandatory school assembly, a belated attempt to address the elephant in the room, focusing on the critical importance of recognizing the subtle, insidious signs of abuse and, crucially, of finding the courage to speak up. While I appreciated the gesture, a part of me couldn't shake the feeling that it was all too little, too late, an effort born of crisis rather than foresight. Still, I acknowledged, with a weary sigh, that at least they were trying to mend what had been so tragically broken. Barely 2 weeks into attempting to navigate the uncharted waters of my new life, I was summoned to testify before a grand jury. The very thought was utterly terrifying, a knot of dread tightening in my stomach, but Patricia Chen, my unwavering advocate, had painstakingly prepared me, rehearsing every possible question, arming me with the strength and clarity I needed to face that intimidating chamber. Stepping into that solemn room, I found a surprising reserve of strength. My voice, though perhaps a whisper at first, grew steadily clearer as I recounted, with unwavering honesty, every excruciating detail of Jeff's abhorrent actions, the systematic degradation, the manipulation, the violations that had scarred me so deeply. I also laid bare the painful truth of everything my mother had, with a chilling indifference, consciously chosen to ignore, effectively becoming an accomplice in her silence. The grand jury, after careful deliberation, returned multiple, weighty indictments against both Jeff and my mother, a powerful affirmation that my truth had been heard and, finally, believed. Thomas, too, took the stand, his testimony a meticulously constructed edifice of facts. He presented every single piece of evidence he had painstakingly collected over time, a veritable mountain of phone records, text messages, emails, and careful observations. His fastidious documentation, a testament to his unwavering vigilance, painted an undeniably clear and devastatingly coherent picture of Jeff's predatory behavior, exposing the insidious, systematic way he had isolated me from anyone who might offer help, weaving a suffocating web of control around me. In a striking turn of cosmic justice, the judge presiding over Thomas's custody case was none other than Judge Hawkins, the very same compassionate magistrate who had, weeks prior, signed my emergency protection order, granting me a crucial shield of safety. She meticulously reviewed the mounting evidence detailing his ex-wife's pattern of abuse against their daughters, now fortified by chilling new testimony from teachers who, with palpable regret, admitted to having noticed the girls' unexplained injuries and distress, but, for reasons they could not adequately explain, had tragically failed to report them. Allowing the cycle of harm to continue, with a solemn gravity that filled the courtroom, Judge Hawkins delivered her decisive ruling. I am granting full and immediate custody to Mr. Thomas, effective immediately. Furthermore, for the mother, I am ordering supervised visitation only, contingent upon her satisfactory completion of comprehensive parenting classes and rigorous anger management therapy. As the word settled, a collective gasp seemed to ripple through the room, quickly followed by a profound wave of relief. Thomas, overwhelmed by the magnitude of the moment, openly wept, tears of pure, unadulterated relief streaming down his face. His daughters, their small bodies trembling with a mixture of fear and newfound security, rushed into his open arms, clinging to him as if to a lifeboat, finally, undeniably safe from the pervasive threat of their mother's emotional and physical violence. The wheels of justice, notoriously slow, ground forward with excruciating deliberation in the criminal case against Jeff. His defense lawyer, a master of obfuscation and delay, employed every conceivable tactic, however desperate or absurd. He brazenly claimed Thomas had maliciously manipulated evidence, attempted to plant the insidious seed that I had been coached on my testimony, and even tried, without success, to have the utterly damning security camera footage deemed inadmissible and thrown out of court. Yet, for every deceitful maneuver, every calculated attempt to derail justice, Patricia Chen, with her sharp intellect and unwavering resolve, was there, poised and ready, expertly countering every single move, steadfastly protecting the integrity of my truth. My mother's case, however, proved to be significantly more intricate, shrouded in layers of complex emotional and legal considerations. Her lawyer, with a cunning blend of sympathy and legal strategy, posited that she, too, was a victim in this sordid affair, a mere pawn manipulated and controlled by Jeff's powerful, insidious influence. But the relentless prosecutor meticulously laid out a compelling narrative backed by irrefutable evidence, a pattern of my mother actively covering for Jeff's egregious abuses, of her explicitly threatening me to maintain a terrified silence, and, most damningly, of her repeatedly and consciously choosing his nefarious presence and her own convenience over my fundamental safety and well-being. The stark reality of her complicity painted a chilling picture of betrayal. 3 long, arduous months after Jeff's dramatic arrest, I was once again called upon to confront my past, this time testifying in a pre-trial hearing. The anticipation of seeing him again was a chilling dread, a tightening in my chest. The sight of him, sitting there in that sterile courtroom, clad in a glaring orange jumpsuit, his wrists and ankles shackled, his entire demeanor visibly diminished, was utterly surreal. Almost an out-of-body experience. This was the man who had once loomed so terrifyingly large, who had seemed utterly powerful, utterly untouchable in my young life. Now, stripped of all his manufactured grandeur, he was nothing more than a pathetic, broken man, literally bound by chains. The illusion of his might had shattered. For a grueling 2 hours, I sat on that stand, my voice unwavering, meticulously detailing the harrowing chronology of the abuse, leaving no stone unturned. Jeff's slick lawyer, predictably, attempted to trip me up, to sow seeds of doubt, insinuating that I was merely confused, or, more sinisterly, that Thomas had deliberately planted these ideas in my impressionable mind. But I held my ground, remaining remarkably calm, steadfastly clinging to the unyielding truth that was mine alone. Thomas saved me, I declared, my voice resonating with an unshakable conviction, the words echoing through the quiet courtroom. Jeff hurt me. Those are the undeniable facts. And with that powerful declaration, the judge, after weighing all the evidence, decisively ruled that there was indeed more than sufficient evidence to proceed to trial. Instantly, Jeff's lawyer, recognizing the looming disaster, scrambled to negotiate a desperate plea deal. But Patricia Chen, her resolve as unyielding as ever, wasn't interested in anything less than a significant, uncompromising sentence of prison time, ensuring true accountability. My mother's trial, surprisingly, commenced first. And once again, I found myself on the witness stand, but this time, the emotional toll was infinitely heavier. I had to testify, not just about the abuse, but about her damning knowledge of it, her active complicity, her deliberate choices to look away. It was, without a shadow of a doubt, far more excruciatingly difficult than testifying against Jeff, for reasons I deeply understood. Because even after everything, despite the years of neglect and betrayal, a stubborn, aching part of my heart still harbored a desperate, childlike yearning for her love. A flicker of hope that she might, just might, finally choose me over him, over herself. The raw pain of that unfulfilled desire made every word a struggle. The verdict came swiftly. She was convicted of child endangerment and, perhaps even more condemning, of failure to protect. The judge handed down a sentence of 3 years in prison, though mercifully suspended to 1 year with a period of probation. The deeper, more indelible mark of her conviction, however, was the mandatory requirement to register as a child abuse offender, a label that would follow her indefinitely, and the absolute prohibition of ever having unsupervised contact with any minors again. As the bailiffs led her away, her handcuffs glinting under the courtroom lights, my mother's gaze, cold and unforgiving, met mine across the silent room. There was no flicker of apology in her eyes, no hint of remorse for the years of suffering she had allowed, no acknowledgement of my pain. Instead, her stare was filled with a burning, bitter anger, a silent accusation that I, her own child, had somehow ruined her life. It was a final, devastating confirmation of where her loyalties truly lay. Jeff's trial, as expected, was an absolute media circus, a frenzied spectacle that captivated the public's morbid curiosity. Headlines screamed across every newspaper and news channel. Pillar of community exposed as predator, local hero a monster, painting a stark, chilling contrast to the image he had so carefully cultivated. Every single aspect of his meticulously crafted public persona, his lauded charity work, his charismatic coaching of youth teams was systematically dismantled, horrifyingly revealed as nothing more than a calculated, insidious facade for grooming behavior, a means to gain trust and access to his vulnerable targets. The dam of silence broke, and a somber trickle of other families began to come forward expressing long-held, unsettling concerns they had regrettably dismissed previously, precisely because of Jeff's unimpeachable, carefully manufactured reputation. The security camera footage, meticulously curated by Thomas, proved to be utterly devastating. The prosecutor, with an unwavering commitment to both justice and my privacy, had to carefully edit the raw material, ensuring my identity remained protected while still presenting irrefutable evidence of Jeff's horrifying, methodical pattern of abuse. As the silent, chilling images played out on the courtroom screen, the faces of the jury members visibly paled, many looking distinctly ill, grappling with the undeniable horror unfolding before their eyes. Thomas, once again, delivered a powerful and methodical testimony, laying out his diligent observations, his exhaustive documentation, and the chilling, systematic process by which Jeff had deliberately isolated me, cutting off every potential avenue of escape or support. Mrs. Grant, with remarkable courage, also took the stand, recounting Jeff's menacing threats and his desperate, malicious attempts to frame Thomas. Even some of the very neighbors who had, for so long, staunchly believed in Jeff's fabricated innocence, now, in the piercing light of hindsight, testified about subtle, unsettling things they had noticed, but tragically dismissed at the time, their belated realizations adding crucial pieces to the damning mosaic of truth. In a final, desperate act of self-preservation, Jeff took the stand in his own defense, still clinging to his pathetic charade, attempting, even then, to play the bewildered victim. He audaciously claimed that I had simply misunderstood his affectionate gestures, that Thomas had cunningly twisted perfectly innocent interactions into something sinister. But under the prosecutor's relentless, surgical cross-examination, every carefully constructed lie, every artfully woven thread of his deceitful narrative, irrevocably unraveled, collapsing into a pile of undeniable contradictions and damning truths. The jury, having witnessed the irrefutable evidence and heard the harrowing testimonies, deliberated for only a mere 3 hours, a testament to the overwhelming clarity of his guilt, returning a unanimous verdict, guilty on all counts. The judge, his voice devoid of emotion, delivered the crushing sentence, 25 years in prison, with the chilling stipulation of no possibility of parole for 15 of those years. As the bailiffs moved to escort him, a guttural, desperate scream erupted from Jeff, a raw, primal cry of impotent rage. He thrashed and struggled as they dragged him away, shrieking wildly that I had ruined his life, that Thomas had manipulated everyone, but this time, his pathetic, self-serving cries fell on deaf ears. The courtroom had heard enough. No one was listening to his lies anymore. In the aftermath of the harrowing trials, as the dust began to settle, life, with a gentle persistence, slowly started to find its new, fragile rhythm. I continued to reside with the compassionate Enuans, who, with open hearts and a profound sense of commitment, had lovingly offered to become my long-term foster parents, providing a sanctuary I desperately needed. Their home became my anchor, a safe harbor where they showered me with unwavering stability and boundless patience, crucial gifts as I slowly, painstakingly navigated the complex, often arduous landscape of working through my deep-seated trauma. Thomas and his two brave daughters seamlessly integrated into my life, becoming more than just friends. They were truly like an extended family. Our Sundays became sacred, marked by shared dinners filled with warmth and quiet conversation, a ritual that grounded us all. The girls and I, bound by the invisible threads of our remarkably similar, painful pasts, forged an unbreakable bond, finding solace and strength in supporting each other through every tender, often difficult, step of our individual healing journeys. And dear Mrs. Grant, with her kindly eyes and gentle demeanor, transformed into the quintessential neighborhood grandmother I had unknowingly yearned for my entire life. She patiently taught me the intricate art of knitting, her hands guiding mine, offered invaluable assistance with my homework, always with a reassuring smile, and, most wonderfully, there were always warm, freshly baked cookies waiting for me when I visited, a comforting aroma that spoke volumes of her unconditional care. Yet, even amidst this newfound peace, some days remained incredibly challenging. The anniversary of my escape, in particular, was an acutely difficult reminder, a stark day filled with a poignant mix of fear and profound relief, reopening old wounds. Thankfully, I was still deeply engaged in therapy, equipped with the tools Dr. Patel had so thoughtfully provided, navigating these painful anniversaries with support and resilience, knowing that healing, as she had wisely said, truly isn't linear. For a year by then, I was actively engaged in therapy, making tangible progress towards reclaiming my life, yet the lingering shadows of trauma still clung fiercely. Nightmares, vivid and visceral, still clawed at my sleep, often leaving me gasping in the suffocating darkness, my heart a frantic drum against my ribs. And a pervasive, gnawing inability to fully trust, a constant vigilance, made genuine connection feel like an impossible feat. Dr. Patel, with her calming voice and reassuring gaze, gently but firmly anchored me to reality. Healing, my dear, she would often say, her words a soft bomb, isn't a race. It's a profound, often circuitous journey. She'd look me directly in the eye, her expression conveying deep understanding. You're not, and can never be, the same person who walked into that darkness, she affirmed. Trauma, a relentless sculptor, undoubtedly reshapes us, but within that reshaping lies an untapped reservoir of strength, a resilience you are only just beginning to comprehend. Didn't you survive? Doesn't that prove an inner fortitude beyond measure? The once daunting halls of school slowly, almost imperceptibly, transformed from a place of dread into one of possibility. My grades, once faltering, began to reflect a renewed focus, a quiet determination to reclaim a semblance of normalcy. More profoundly, I started forging genuine connections, new friendships blossoming like wildflowers in unexpected places. These weren't friendships burdened by the heavy weight of my past. These were individuals who embraced the unfolding person I was becoming, their acceptance untainted by pity for the shattered child I'd been. It was liberating, an exhale I hadn't realized I'd been holding. Meanwhile, Thomas, ever the vigilant protector, found a new calling. He secured a position at a reputable security company, a place where his meticulous attention to detail, his almost instinctual protective instincts, weren't just acknowledged but genuinely valued and rewarded. It was a perfect fit for a man who had already proven his unwavering commitment to safeguarding the vulnerable. And his daughters, they bloomed, shedding the heavy cloak of fear and abuse. In the safe haven of therapy and the nurturing environment of their new school, they weren't just surviving. They were truly thriving, their laughter echoing freely. And marred by the shadow of their mother's past cruelty, the very fabric of our neighborhood underwent a remarkable, almost palpable transformation. The house that once cast such a long, sinister shadow, Jeff's house, was finally sold, its dark history sealed away. A young family, their faces alight with hopeful anticipation, moved in, blissfully unaware of the unspeakable horrors that had once stained its walls. This wasn't just a change of occupants, it was a symbolic cleansing, a reclaiming of innocence. Moreover, the community itself, once perhaps complacent or unknowingly complicit in its silence, awakened. A newfound vigilance permeated the air. Residents became more attuned, more willing to truly listen, not just hear when a child dared to speak up, when the smallest whisper of concern arose. And I, once silenced, found my voice. I stood before countless community meetings, my voice trembling at first, but strengthening with each spoken word. I spoke not just about recognizing the insidious signs of abuse, but about the profound, undeniable imperative to believe children truly believe them when they dare to articulate their pain. I peeled back the veneer of respectability, exposing the chilling reality of predators who often masquerade as upstanding members of society. Each testimony was an arduous emotional marathon, draining yet utterly necessary, a searing reminder of the price of silence. 2 long years after Jeff's chilling conviction, I stood on a different, larger stage, a conference teeming with dedicated social workers and steadfast law enforcement officers. There, I laid bare the raw, unfiltered truth of my case, the initial, heartbreaking failures of a system designed to protect, yet which had tragically faltered. But then, I highlighted the pivotal turning point, how one person's unwavering determination to meticulously document the truth, to truly see what others had so stubbornly refused to acknowledge, had ultimately pulled me back from the brink. Thomas, I declared, my voice resonating with gratitude and conviction, saw beyond the convenient blindness, beyond the easy dismissal. He risked absolutely everything, his reputation, his livelihood, his very safety to shield a child who, I bled, was not even his own. That, I emphasized, letting the words hang in the air, is the kind of selfless, courageous humanity we desperately need more of in this world. Then came my 16th birthday, a day not just marked by cake and candles, but by a profound, life-altering affirmation, the nuance officially adopted me. The courtroom, usually a somber space, pulsed with an almost electric energy, packed to the brim with every single soul who had, through unwavering love and support, become my real family. Thomas stood proudly beside his daughters, their smiles wide and genuine. Mrs. Grant, Nathaniel, even the stoic detective Martinez and the sharp Patricia Chin all were there, a testament to the intricate web of connections that had saved me. And presiding over it all was Judge Hawkins, the very same compassionate judge who, years earlier, had signed my emergency protection order, a critical lifeline thrown at a moment of desperate need. As she meticulously signed the papers that formally made me an N1, she looked at me with genuine warmth, a soft smile gracing her lips. "It's truly wonderful to see you thriving, my dear," she pronounced, her words a blessing, sealing not just a legal document, but a new destiny. That night, Thomas's house, once a quiet refuge, erupted in a joyous cacophony, hosting a huge celebration. The entire neighborhood, almost everyone, poured in. It was a remarkable sight. The very same individuals who, not so long ago, might have regarded Thomas with suspicion or even outright shunned him for his unconventional protective actions, now clinked glasses, sharing laughter and stories. They were celebrating not just our survival, but the incredible resilience that had blossomed from shared trauma, a testament to the power of community when it truly comes together. Later, amidst the gentle chaos of children's laughter and the murmur of adult conversation, Thomas approached me. His gaze, usually so firm, softened as he watched his daughters, unfettered and joyful, playing with the other kids. "You saved my girls," he murmured, his voice thick with a raw, profound gratitude that transcended mere words. "Your unwavering courage in speaking up, in defying the silence, gave me the undeniable evidence I so desperately needed to protect them. To tear them away from that destructive path." I met his gaze, my heart swelling with a reciprocal understanding. "No, Thomas," I corrected gently, a knowing smile touching my lips. "We saved each other. Your vigilance and belief gave me a future, and in turn, it gave you the means to secure theirs. It was a shared battle, a shared victory." As my eyes swept across the vibrant tableau of my chosen family faces etched with love, laughter, and an unspoken understanding, an almost dizzying thought washed over me. How utterly, unimaginably different would my life have unfolded if Thomas hadn't, by some serendipitous twist of fate, moved in next door? What if his keen, watchful eyes hadn't noticed? What if he hadn't possessed the audacious courage to risk everything, his very existence? It sometimes felt to extend a hand to a child shrouded in darkness. The sheer enormity of that what if still had the power to send a shiver down my spine. Jeff, a monster stripped of his power, was where he belonged, behind bars, serving his time, his malevolent shadow no longer capable of threatening anyone ever again. As for my biological mother, she had vanished after her release, dissolving into the anonymity of a cross-country move. And to my own surprise, perhaps, I felt no pang of loss, no lingering shred of longing. Her absence was a quiet mercy, a final severing of ties that had only ever brought pain. The scars, both the physical etchings on my skin and the deeper, more intricate emotional wounds woven into my psyche, remained. They were a permanent part of my story, a testament to what I had endured. Some nights, the terror still surged, jolting me awake in a cold sweat, my heart hammering against my ribs, a phantom panic clinging to the edges of my consciousness. Some days, the simple act of trusting another person felt like scaling a sheer cliff face, an exhausting battle against ingrained suspicion. Yet, amidst these lingering shadows, a profound, undeniable healing was unfolding. I was enveloped, embraced, by a constellation of people who not only genuinely loved me but fiercely, unequivocally protected me, their presence a constant, reassuring anchor. And that, I've come to understand, is the profound, often humbling truth about survival. It isn't a magical destination, a finish line you cross where suddenly all your troubles vanish like smoke. No, it's a relentless, often winding journey, a labyrinth navigated one day, one moment, at a time. And the secret? It's having the right people by your side, a steadfast crew to help you weather the storms and celebrate the sun-drenched moments, making each step forward not just bearable, but ultimately, profoundly meaningful. To this very day, Thomas, my unwavering protector, remains our next-door neighbor, living beside the Guans. When we sought a new home, we meticulously ensured it was within comfortable proximity to his, cementing our bond. His daughters, blossoming into vibrant young women, now affectionately call me their big sister, a title I cherish beyond measure, and Mrs. Grant, our steadfast rock through so much turmoil, also relocated to our new neighborhood. How could she not? The thought of being separated from her kids, the children she had nurtured and fought for, was simply unbearable for her maternal heart. We are, in every beautiful sense of the word, an unconventional family. Our bonds are not forged by the genetic lottery of blood, but by something far more potent, far more deliberate, the unwavering, conscious choice to protect each other, to believe in each other's inherent worth, and to ensure, with every fiber of our being, that no other child will ever again be forced to suffer in heartbreaking silence. It's a vow, a sacred covenant we all implicitly share. And so, every single day, I consciously, deliberately I make the active decision to continue healing, to keep growing, to keep living a life overflowing with purpose and joy. Because, in the grand tapestry of existence, I've realized that this deliberate embrace of life is the most profound, most triumphant revenge against those who, with their cruelty, tried so desperately to shatter me, to reduce me to dust. But I wasn't broken. I am not, nor will I ever be, defined as merely a victim. I am a survivor, a thriver, a testament to the unyielding power of the human spirit.